Memories of a terrifying car accident crash through the protagonist's mind, feeling like a distant urban legend from a previous life. Now reincarnated and living in a new world for a year, the 18-year-old soul decides to cast aside fear and embrace this second chance. While clinging to human memories, the fox-bodied protagonist clumsily dives headfirst into the deep snow. Emerging from the drift, the creature shakes off the cold and accepts the reality that humanity is a thing of the past. The story of In the Northern Fort begins, introducing a mystical white fox and the humans destined to shape her fate. Gazing down, the protagonist inspects the soft, round paws that have replaced human hands. The examination continues to the pristine white fur that now coats this small, animalistic body. Fully accepting this new identity, the protagonist acknowledges being a vulnerable baby fox in this strange world. Staring at a reflection in the water confirms the transformation, reinforcing that the human form is gone forever. With a sudden burst of movement, the little fox leaps into action. Pouncing awkwardly at a fish in the shallow water, the fox lands with a clumsy splash. The hunt proves difficult as the tiny predator flails in the water, unable to secure the catch. Despite retaining a human mind, the protagonist realizes that wild instincts are beginning to override logical thought. A familiar voice suddenly cuts through the air, calling out the name Milfiria. Looking up, Milfiria sees a majestic adult fox looming over her, questioning what the little one is doing. Delighted by the presence of her guardian, Milfiria happily cries out to her mother. The mother fox confirms the baby's identity, firmly stating that her name in this world is Milfiria. This elegant creature is Snowlia, the mother who guides the reincarnated soul through this new life. Snowlia leans in with a serious expression, telling Milfiria they must return home immediately to talk. Milfiria clarifies the truth to herself, noting that neither she nor her mother are actually foxes despite their appearance. They are in fact powerful mystical beings known as the spirits of the snow. Snowlia delivers the hard news that Milfiria must stay behind alone because she is still too small to assume a human form. Stunned by the sudden command to stay behind, Milfiria is left speechless. Snowlia explains the reason for her departure, revealing she has been summoned by the king himself. Milfiria instantly recognizes the title, recalling the king as the most powerful man in all of Elydra. Snowlia lectures on their duty to the land, explaining that spirits have been devoted to helping the king since the war. Milfiria recalls hearing rumors that not all spirits are so willing to cooperate with human rulers. Snowlia dismisses the dissent, citing conflict with a neighboring country as the reason she must offer her support now. With the political situation deteriorating, the mother spirit has decided she must stand by the king's side. She promises to return in a month or so and instructs her child to wait patiently until then. Milfiria is horrified by the timeline, shouting out in disbelief at the prospect of being alone for a whole month. Protesting that previous trips only took a day, the infant spirit wails about being abandoned while she is still so small. Snowlia warns that King's Landing is a dangerous place where greedy humans seek to steal the essence of spirits for their own ambitions. She refuses to take Milfiria along, claiming the child is too pure, though Milfiria internally screams that her past life makes her anything but innocent. Desperate to not be left behind, the little fox clings to Snowlia's robes and begs to be taken, insisting she is actually covered in worldly desire. Snowlia pets her head, remarking on Milfiria's odd maturity but ultimately dismissing her as just a child who must stay. Embracing her daughter, the mother admits how difficult it is to leave her behind while she is still so young. Her expression hardens as she reminds Milfiria that as heirs to the name Snowlia, they must be strong together. She commands the little fox to overcome her cowardice and endure 1 month of solitude. Snowlia dashes away in a blur of motion, leaving Milfiria crying out in vain for her to wait. Left alone in the snow, Milfiria shouts in frustration that her mother is being incredibly mean. Defeated by the sudden silence, the tiny fox slumps onto the ground in deep depression. She shudders recalling her mother's brutal training methods, like being kicked off a cliff, realizing she would be dead if she weren't a spirit. Despite the fear, she resolves to toughen up and become stronger than ever to survive this trial. Milfiria comforts herself with the fact that spirits don't need food and mistakenly believes no animals will attack her. A sudden realization strikes that she might have underestimated the dangers of the wild after forgetting about predators. Flashbacks of her previous life surface as she compares this isolation to the homesickness she felt when leaving for college. With a sharp slap to her own cheeks, Milfiria psychs herself up to break out of the gloom. She gazes out at the vast, snowy mountain range, trying to steel her resolve against the silence. But the bravery crumbles instantly as tears burst from her eyes in a torrent of overwhelming emotion. She wails that she will die of loneliness, remembering how her mother always appeared whenever she cried out before. Deciding that staying alone for a month is impossible, she admits that despite her adult mind, she is emotionally still a child. A new plan forms as she dashes forward, determined to follow her mother all the way to the capital. She imagines her mother praising her toughness, though she worries about the travel time since she cannot transform yet. The little fox trudges through the deep snow, panting heavily and feeling like she has covered a vast distance. She turns around to check her progress, only to see her home cave sitting just a few steps away. Milfiria stares blankly at the pathetic distance she has actually managed to traverse. Furious at her physical limitations, she curses her cute, short little legs for slowing her down. She forces herself to pick up the pace, tumbling and rolling down the slopes in a desperate bid for speed. Exhausted and panting, she finally manages to stand on trembling legs after the rough descent. Success is finally hers as she reaches the road leading out of the mountains, leaving her home behind for good. 15 days pass on the journey, marking the halfway point until her mother was supposed to return. Milfiria reaches a signpost and notes that despite rumors of a warmer climate, it is still snowing near the capital. Nervous but determined, she looks toward the city, wondering if she will be okay in the countryside she has never seen before. Milfiria gazes toward the distant structures, wondering what lies on the other side of the imposing gates. A child's shrill voice suddenly pierces the air, excitedly misidentifying the spirit fox as a mere doggy. Startled by the sudden noise, Milfiria freezes in place as the children approach. Bristling with indignation, she demands to know who they are calling a dog, clearly shaken by the fright. Before she can escape, a pair of hands snatches her up, leaving her stunned and helpless in their grip. The children cheer and marvel at her soft fur, passing her around like a toy while she struggles. An adult interrupts the rough play, asking the children what they are doing while Milfiria pleads not to be pulled apart. The children gasp in surprise as Milfiria seizes the chance to wiggle free from their grasp. She scampers into the bushes, vowing never to return to that town or deal with those rough children again. Alone again, a wave of sadness washes over her as she whispers how much she misses her mother. She realizes her childish emotions are a result of her mind being dragged down by the young age of her new body. Resolving to take action, she decides to head to the fort, certain the knights there can guide her to King's Landing. The imposing stone walls of the fort loom ahead under the bright sky, promising the answers she seeks. Milfiria leaps down toward the structure from the hillside, awed by the sheer size of the fortifications. 2 guards stand watch at the entrance, oblivious to the small white fox observing them from the underbrush. Spotting a gap in the perimeter fence, she calculates that her small frame can easily squeeze through the opening. With a determined effort, she pops through the bars with a soft sound, landing successfully on the other side. She lands softly and quickly tucks herself away into the foliage to remain unseen by the soldiers. From her hiding spot, she marvels at the sight of real knights training, a thrilling spectacle she never saw in her past life. A sharp voice cuts through the air, reprimanding a soldier for slouching and lacking the proper attitude. Milfiria observes the commanding figure, noting the large scar on his face and deducing he must be their superior. The intense gaze of the scarred knight sweeps across the training grounds as he instructs his men. She realizes with a start that the intimidating commander is a knight with only one functioning eye. Her eyes widen in surprise as she fixates on the formidable warrior, captivated by his presence. Panic surges through her as the knight suddenly turns in her direction, prompting her to scramble away. Heart pounding, she crouches low in the grass and wonders anxiously if she was spotted. She peeks out cautiously, only to find the knight staring directly at her hiding spot. The scarred knight narrows his single eye, his sharp gaze piercing right through her concealment. Terrified realization sets in as she confirms that he is definitely looking right at her. Abandoning stealth, she bolts from the bushes while the knights look on in confusion at the sudden movement. She skids around a corner and presses herself against the wall, desperate to break his line of sight. Catching her breath, she regrets her cowardly flight, remembering that she needs them to show her the way to King's Landing. Alone and trembling in the cold, Milfiria tries to muster courage by reminding herself of her past human life while wondering what is for dinner. She instinctively calls out for her mother, but her voice fades into the silence of the snowy landscape. Her bravado collapses instantly, and she glumly admits that she might just be a coward after all. Paranoia sets in as she imagines humans discovering she is a spirit or brutally ripping off her white fur. The small fox trudges through the deep drifts, navigating the narrow, frozen alleyway between the tall stone buildings. Deciding the alley is too dark, she spots a secluded nook and decides it will serve as a shelter for the night. Exhaustion completely overwhelms her tiny body, and she curls into a tight ball to preserve warmth. Sleep claims the infant spirit, her breathing deepening as she rests peacefully in the snow. The night passes quietly, giving way to a calm morning over the snow-covered rooftops and trees. A sudden noise jolts Milfiria awake just as a hand pushes open the window directly above her resting spot. A stern man with spiky hair and a prominent vertical scar running down his left eye gazes out into the morning air. Milfiria freezes in place, her eyes widening in shock as she stares up at the figure looming above. The man leans casually out of the window, his sharp gaze locking onto the tiny white fox huddled against the wall. Panic surges through Milfiria as she instantly recognizes him as the terrifying man with the scar. Horror strikes when she realizes that of all places, she accidentally chose to sleep directly beneath his room. The man's expression remains unreadable and stoic as he stares down at the trembling creature, assessing the situation. He shifts his weight, preparing to make a move that sends a fresh wave of alarm through the fox below. With a heavy thud, boots crunch into the snow as the man leaps from the window and lands right next to her. The sound of footsteps crunching through the snow fills the air as he steadily closes the distance between them. Milfiria cowers against the wall, paralyzed by confusion and fear as she questions why he is approaching her. Terrifying visions flood her mind, depicting gruesome scenarios of being roasted on a spit or stripped of her fur. The scarred man reaches out a hand toward her, his face impassive but his looming presence signaling danger. Squeezing her eyes shut in terror, Milfiria screams internally, bracing herself for the terrible fate she believes is coming. The massive, one-eyed knight blocks the only exit, his imposing frame sealing off any chance of escape. Panic seizes Milfiria as she realizes there is absolutely no room to dash past him to safety. Trapped and trembling, the tiny fox cowers in the face of the looming threat. Her mind screams for help, paralyzed by the overwhelming certainty that she cannot handle this situation. A sharp gasp escapes her throat as the giant figure shifts his weight. He reaches down with a low greeting, causing the terrified spirit to shrink back with a pathetic squeak. As his hand descends, Milfiria notices the rough texture of his skin and the blisters born from wielding a sword. Staring up at his scarred face, she is struck by an undeniable aura of raw strength. Fear overrides admiration as she realizes that getting caught now could mean the end of her life. Desperation takes hold, screaming in her mind that she absolutely cannot allow herself to be captured. She laments her inability to conjure a defensive blizzard or freeze her enemy like her powerful mother can. The uncertainty of what this human might do to her fuels her terror. Despite the odds, she steels her resolve, refusing to give up without a fight. Instinct takes over, and she snaps her jaws shut around the man's finger with all her might. The force of the bite echoes through her small body as she clamps down on the intruding hand. She releases her grip, staring in confusion at the finger she just attacked. To her shock, the man simply apologizes for frightening her, his expression softening with regret. He gently withdraws his hand, leaving the bewildered fox unharmed and confused by his mercy. A few drops of blood well up on his finger, marking the spot where her tiny teeth broke the skin. Silence hangs between them as the knight stares down at the small creature who just attacked him. The tension dissipates, replaced by a strange stillness in the snowy alley. He straightens up to his full height, casting a long shadow over the tiny fox. Milfiria stares at the wound, stunned by the realization that she actually bit a human. The metallic taste of blood lingers in her mouth, awakening a wild side she didn't know she possessed. Worry instantly replaces aggression as she hopes her small teeth didn't cause him any serious harm. Shocked by her own violence, she looks up at him with wide, apologetic eyes. The knight observes her change in demeanor, noting that she has suddenly become quite lively. To her own surprise, her body moves on its own, and she finds herself rubbing her head against his boot. Her mind screams for him to stay away, yet she cries out in worry, torn between fear and concern. The man turns to leave, but Milfiria instinctively trots after him, unable to suppress her new urges. He pauses and glances back, confused by the tiny creature following close at his heels. Scratching his head in bewilderment, he asks what is wrong with her, while she admits internally that she has no idea herself. Milfiria remains on guard against humans as a baby fox, though her human soul feels compelled to apologize for biting the man. She observes that despite his scary face, he doesn't actually seem like a bad person. Reconsidering her stance, the little fox decides she shouldn't be so quick to judge his character. She watches intently as the man turns and walks away from the window. Milfiria wonders if he went to treat his wound, feeling a sudden pang of loss when he disappears from sight. Frustration bubbles up as she wishes she could speak just to tell him how sorry she is. Defeated by the language barrier, the tiny fox slumps onto the ground in silence. A hand suddenly grips the window frame, signaling the man's return. The man reappears, holding a steaming plate of food in his hand. Milfiria's ears perk up as she realizes he has come back. A plate of hot, delicious-looking meatballs is revealed to the hungry fox. The man holds out the dish, leaving Milfiria wondering if the meatballs are intended for her. It is the first time she has smelled cooked food since arriving in this world. She remembers that spirits don't usually get hungry and her mother only offered dying wild animals. However, seeing the prepared food on that plate stirs a forgotten appetite. Drool drips from her mouth as she stares hungrily at the man. Unable to contain herself, she presses her paws against the wall and lets out a pleading sound. The man holds up a hand, telling her to wait just a second. He places a wooden crate down to create a platform for her. Carefully, he sets the plate of meatballs onto the makeshift table. Milfiria's eyes sparkle with excitement as the food is placed within her reach. She inches closer to inspect the offering. Sniffing the air, she investigates the savory aroma. Overcome with joy, she wags her tail and circles the food. The man steps back, telling her to take her time and that he will leave her to it. Milfiria watches him for a moment as he prepares to leave. He turns and walks away quickly. Her attention snaps back to the steaming meatballs, her mouth watering. She climbs onto the crate and digs into the meal. A sudden realization strikes her as she takes the first bite. The flavor is overwhelming, leaving her with a look of pure bliss. Completely satisfied, she radiates happiness after the warm meal. Milfiria happily laps up the food from the plate, thoroughly enjoying the meal provided to her. Finishing her meal, she stands on her hind legs to peer over the edge of the wooden crate. The scarred knight wipes down his blade with a cloth, noticing the small white fox watching him from the box. Staring at the fresh wound on his face, Milfiria wonders if the injury will leave a permanent scar. She reasons that her spirit nature means no germs, but she still thinks he should bandage the cut. The knight leans against the window frame, gazing silently at the small creature as she watches him back. He remarks with a hint of amusement that she licked the plate completely clean. Looking down at her, he asks where she intends to sleep for the night. Milfiria glances around the corner at a pile of tools and equipment stored in the shed. She finds a comfortable spot among the tools and settles herself down with a soft rustle. The knight smiles gently, noting that she will have to move the shovel in the morning. He bids the small fox goodnight, extending a hand before leaving her to rest. Milfiria gazes after him, realizing with a warm feeling that he is actually worried about her. She reflects on the sound of his voice, noting how low and gentle it sounds despite his rough appearance. Her thoughts drift to the one-eyed knight as she listens to the rhythmic sound of him polishing his sword again. Lying in the quiet, she perks up her ears as she begins to hear the faint signs of life around her. The sounds of other knights echo from the distance, reminding her that she is not alone. She remembers the crushing loneliness of her time in the mountains where the silence was absolute. The scenery of the lonely road blurs in her mind as she drifts between her current reality and her memories. She acknowledges that she is neither a wild beast nor a solitary spirit since she retains memories of her past life. Comfort settles over her as she realizes she still feels most at ease when she is near people. Morning light floods the area, illuminating the stone walls of the fort as a new day begins. She stretches her limbs luxuriously as the knight greets her, noting that she is up early. The knight rests his arms on the windowsill, looking down at the waking fox from his room. He offers a small kindness, telling her that he will go get her some breakfast. Milfiria perks up with excitement, asking if she is really going to get breakfast too. Suddenly, the knight begins to change his clothes, exposing his back and startling the watching fox. Milfiria freezes in shock at the sudden nudity, her eyes widening in surprise and embarrassment. She quickly looks away, flustered by the unexpected sight of the knight undressing. To distract herself, she frantically begins digging a hole in the ground with her paws. The knight warns her about getting stuck, but she is too obsessed with the fun of digging to listen. Predictably, she falls into the deep hole and has to apologize for her mischief. The scarred knight smiles warmly down at Milfiria, confirming that his earlier reassurances about safety were true. Milfiria perks up, her attention caught by the sudden offering placed before her. A steaming bowl of stew filled with hearty chunks of meat and vegetables lands in front of her as the man urges her to eat up. Satisfied that she is fed, the knight waves a casual goodbye from the window and leaves her to her meal. Left alone, Milfiria stares intently at the delicious-looking stew, her hunger instantly taking over. After devouring the meal, she licks her lips in satisfaction, feeling content and full. With a full belly, she makes a firm decision to stay at the fort for the time being. She reasons that the fort is a safe haven populated by knights rather than first-seeking hunters, making it the perfect hideout. Watching the knights run their training laps, she realizes she won't be lonely here while she waits for her mother's return. Most importantly, the promise of regular, delicious meals seals the deal for the food-motivated spirit. With her mind made up, she sets out on a mission to explore every corner of her temporary home. She wanders through the stables, peeking curiously at the towering horses resting in their stalls. Stepping outside, she discovers a vast open space covered in pristine, untouched snow. It is a massive training field, offering a perfect, blank canvas of fresh powder for her to conquer. Unable to resist the allure of the fluffy white ground, she tentatively steps onto the surface. Giving in to her animal instincts, she leaps into the air with a joyous shout of pure excitement. She justifies her playtime by reminding herself that she is currently just a little fox, so she might as well enjoy it. Zooming across the field, she excitedly vows to leave a trail of paw prints over every inch of the snow. She dives headfirst into the drifts, rolling and burrowing through the powder with reckless abandon. Shaking the snow from her fur, she happily concludes that today was a genuinely good and fun day. Returning to her shelter, she spots the scarred knight waiting by the door. He turns his head, his sharp eyes instantly locking onto the returning fox. He watches her approach with a knowing look, leaning casually against the doorframe. He offers her a warm blanket, which she happily accepts for its fluffiness despite her fur keeping her warm enough. Another meal is placed on the windowsill, ensuring the little guest is well fed for the night. The knight smiles knowingly, observing that she seemed to have a lot of fun running around on the training field earlier. Milfiria freezes in her tracks, mortified to realize that he witnessed her entire display of childish playing. Burying her face in her tail, she curls up in embarrassment and vows to be much more careful about her dignity tomorrow. The knight looks down in confusion at the sulking fox, while she internally reinforces that one can never be too cautious around humans. Two knights chat casually outside the barracks, informing one another that it is time for the scheduled shift change. Exchanging a polite goodnight, the guards rotate their posts while Milfiria hides in the bushes nearby. Peeking out cautiously from her snowy cover, the little fox hopes that no one noticed her presence. Scanning the area with vigilance, she confirms that the coast is clear and she sees no one. Relieved that her cover remains blown, she perks up and declares that everything is all right. With a wiggle of her body, she prepares to scramble out of her hiding spot into the open snow. Milfiria slides through the snow, noting that 4 days have passed since she decided to stay at the fort. During her surveillance, she has learned that the number of knights stationed there is surprisingly small for such a large fortress. She admits it is fun to play hide and seek and explore without being spotted, though she insists she isn't just playing around. Defending her daily routine, she exclaims to herself that staying hidden is actually a lot of work. Inside the fort, the one-eyed knight sits by the window with a cup, unaware he is being watched. Milfiria notes that this specific knight with one eye gives her food faithfully every morning and evening. He is always careful to avoid loud noises to keep from scaring her, showing skill in gently closing windows and doors. Although she remains a little prejudiced and nervous, she concludes that the one-eyed knight must be a good person. The knight suddenly speaks up from the window, announcing that he has got something for her. He extends his hand out the window, offering a treat directly to the cautious fox. Sniffing the air, Milfiria detects the scent of meat, wondering if the savory treat is jerky. The knight leans casually on the sill, waiting patiently for her to accept the offering. He observes her silence with a calm and patient gaze. Milfiria stares at the hand, drooling slightly as hunger wars with her caution. She realizes with hesitation that he wants her to eat directly out of his hand instead of from a plate. Conflicted and unsure what to do, She laments that her appetite is getting the better of her sadness. Pacing nervously in the snow, she silently begs him to just put the food down on the box. The knight encourages the hesitant fox, assuring her that it is good and urging her to eat it. With a reassuring look, he promises her that he will not do anything to harm her. Milfiria pauses, weighing his words against her instincts. Overcoming her fear, she tentatively approaches the hand holding the dried meat. With a quick movement, she leans in to take the offering directly from his fingers. The knight watches her closely, ensuring she takes the food without fear. Having secured the prize, Milfiria quickly scampers back to a safe distance. She happily munches on the snack, exclaiming in delight that it is absolutely delicious. The knight smiles warmly, pleased to see the little fox enjoying the food he provided. The one-eyed knight offers more food to the little fox, delighting Milfiria with the delicious treat. She happily munches away, completely absorbed in the joy of eating her fill. The knight watches her with a gentle expression as she focuses entirely on chewing her meal. He slowly reaches out a hand, attempting to bridge the distance between them while she eats. Reflexes taking over, Milfiria instantly darts away from his touch in a blur of white fur. The knight looks visibly dejected as he explains he only wanted to pet her, while she stubbornly keeps her distance. He stares out at the forest with a slumped posture, radiating a wave of disappointment that makes Milfiria pause. Guilt washes over the little fox as she watches him, conflicted by her instinctual reaction. She admits to herself that she always gets nervous and runs away whenever he tries to touch her. It pains her to see the crestfallen look on his face every single time he fails to pet her. Frustrated with herself, she questions why she cannot just let him pet her since he feeds her delicious jerky daily. She wonders if her evasion is due to animal instinct or spirit nature, admitting she fears his large hand falling on her head. Internally, she offers a sincere apology to the one-eyed knight for her skittish behavior. She insists that despite being a lone spirit, she is not the type of girl who enjoys pushing people away. The window suddenly slides shut, cutting off her internal monologue as the knight bids her goodbye. Left staring at the closed window, Milfiria sits in stunned silence at the abrupt dismissal. Recovering quickly, she decides to try making amends and allowing him to pet her after dinner. Later, she creeps through the bushes, rustling the leaves as she navigates the castle grounds. She praises her own stealth skills, believing she has successfully avoided detection by the other knights for another day. Her thoughts drift to food as she wonders if the one-eyed knight has returned with her dinner yet. A sudden rustling noise nearby catches her attention, freezing her in her tracks. Sniffing the air, she detects the scent of another animal hiding in the brush. She guesses it might be a stray dog and pauses to assess the situation. As the creature emerges, she realizes with horror that it is not a mere stray but something far more dangerous. A vicious wild dog glares at her, its eyes locked onto her small form with predatory intent. Terror grips her as she recognizes it as a real wild animal, far different from the tame creatures of the fort. The beast lowers its head and bares its teeth, preparing to strike at the defenseless fox. With a terrifying roar, the wild dog lunges forward, snapping its jaws in a lethal attack. Milfiria sees the murderous look in its eyes and knows it views her only as prey. Screaming internally that she is going to be killed, she turns and bolts for her life. She spots a deep patch of snow and instinctively directs her flight toward it. Utilizing her light weight, she runs across the surface of the snow while hoping the heavy dog will sink and slow down. Sprinting through the deep snow, the desperate fox hopes that the difficult terrain will buy her some time to escape the predator. The white wolf growls menacingly as it closes the distance, forcing the terrified prey to scramble away. Nearby, a group of knights notices the commotion, shouting in alarm as they spot the unfolding chase. The sound of frantic paws hitting the snow fills the air as the deadly pursuit continues. Just as the wolf lunges to kill, a knight screams and intervenes, startling the predator. The knights stare in confusion, realizing that the creature being hunted is the very fox they have been hearing rumors about. Ignoring the humans completely, the fox decides she cannot be bothered with them and continues her desperate flight. She pushes her small body to the limit, running blindly to put distance between herself and the wolf. Ahead, she spots a large body of water and identifies it as the pond, seeing a potential escape route. With the predator hot on her heels, she realizes that her only chance of survival is to get into the water immediately. Without hesitation, the fox leaps from the snowy bank and splashes into the icy water while the wolf skids to a halt. Paddling furiously, She urges herself to swim faster to put distance between herself and the shore. The wolf barks in frustration from the bank, but the fox correctly predicts that it will not follow her into the freezing water. Relieved by the size of the pond, she surmises that this large body of water is likely used for snow-clearing operations. Though the water is freezing, she reassures herself that her thick undercoat is keeping her safe from the cold for now. She realizes that she must keep moving her paws constantly, or the weight of her waterlogged fur will drag her down. Defiantly, she thinks that while she may look delicious, she is mostly fluff, shouting internally for the wolf to give up. Despite her bravado, she whimpers softly as she struggles to stay afloat in the icy expanse. Her situation worsens as the freezing water begins to seep through her protective fur layer. Exhaustion sets in as her legs grow heavy and the bitter cold begins to sap her remaining strength. The knights rush to the scene, shouting commands to catch the animal as they spot the fox struggling in the water. On the shore, the wolf barks aggressively one last time, unwilling to give up its prize easily. Intimidated by the approaching soldiers, the wolf finally turns tail and flees, leaving the fox behind. A bearded knight calls out to the fox, ordering her to come here, which she gratefully acknowledges. The man reaches out with a stern expression, gesturing for the small creature to swim towards him. Overwhelmed by his intense demeanor, the fox hesitates, paralyzed by fear despite his offer of help. The bearded knight yells at her to hurry up because it is cold, causing the fox to think he is incredibly scary. Terrified by his loud voice, the fox internally screams at him to stop yelling at her. A bald knight joins in, shouting aggressively for her to get up there and demanding to know what she is doing. Faced with the bald man's furious expression, the fox turns away in a panic, desperate to escape the scary humans. She acknowledges that they are good people for chasing the dog away, but wonders why they all have such terrifying faces. Comparing her glamorous mental image of a knight to these muscular, rough men, she concludes that without uniforms, no one would know they were knights. A bald man stares at the struggling creature, remarking that he has seen thugs with faces like that in his past life. His companion mocks him, suggesting the little fox refuses to come ashore because it is terrified of his scary face. Panic rises within Milfiria as she realizes these arguing men are just like her, and she begs them to stop fighting. The men shout that they are all scary, so one decides to solve the problem by using a long stick. They agree to use the makeshift tool to poke the fox and push her towards the safety of the land. A large stick splashes into the water next to her, causing Milfiria to scream in absolute terror. The man tries to reassure her with frantic waves, but his imposing appearance only fuels her panic. Milfiria realizes that her overwhelming sense of caution is paralyzing her just as much as their scary faces. She refuses to endanger herself by jumping into the arms of strangers, even with death closing in. Her strength gives out, and she lets out a weak cry as the current begins to pull her under. Total exhaustion sets in, and she feels her legs stop working in the freezing water. As she sinks, a vision of her mother appears in her fading consciousness. With her last breath, she cries out for her mother while slipping beneath the surface. The men on the bank freeze in shock as the little fox disappears into the water. Darkness envelopes Milfiria as she accepts the terrifying reality that she is drowning. A boot steps firmly onto the scene, shocking the bystanders into silence. A figure dives headfirst into the river with a massive splash to save the sinking life. Strong fingers close around the drowning fox, pulling her back from the brink of death. Milfiria is hauled out of the water and tucked safely against a broad, warm chest. The one-eyed knight runs frantically with the rescued fox, his expression twisted with worry. He shouts desperately as he races against time to save the small creature in his arms. Opening her eyes weakly, Milfiria recognizes her savior as the gentle knight who fed her. Deputy Captain Grawl of the 9th Branch sits at his desk, diligently focusing on his official paperwork. Upon finishing his duties, the deputy captain rises from his seat and exits the room with a sense of purpose. He stops at a window in the corridor, gazing out at the snowy landscape outside. In the courtyard, a small white fox plays energetically in the deep snow. The playful creature leaps into the air and dives headfirst into a snowbank. It burrows deep into the powder, leaving only its fluffy tail visible as it wiggles. A subordinate knight approaches Grawl, asking the captain what he is watching with such intensity. Peering out the window alongside his superior, the younger knight exclaims in surprise upon spotting the animal. He recognizes the creature, asking if it is the same fox that has been sighted around the fort lately. Grawl confirms the sighting with a brief, stoic affirmation. The baby fox pops its head out of the snow, having taken up residence in the fort about 4 days prior. It appears to be an orphan too young to hunt, likely abandoned or separated from its parents since there is no sign of a mother. Grawl muses that the fox is so adorable and pushy that he instinctively feels it must be a female. Narration reveals that he is not the only one aware of her, as many others have seen her roaming the training grounds. In the harsh, isolated winter of the northern fort, the tough knights find their hearts soothed by finding her small footprints. The subordinate teases Grawl, remarking that being a lover of cute animals actually suits him. Grawl abruptly flicks the younger knight on the forehead to silence the teasing. The young man recoils in shock, stunned by the sudden physical reprimand. Terrified, the subordinate apologizes repeatedly while Grawl menacingly invites him to join a sword training session. As the fox waits, Grawl reflects that while he doesn't hide the fox's presence, the others don't know he personally feeds it. He notes that he has prepared something different today, a secret arrangement shared only with the head chef. The chef explains that he switched to turnips this time because the fox refused to eat the green peas previously. Grawl accepts the dish, reasoning that the neutral taste of turnips should be acceptable to the picky eater. The chef adds that he would be happy enough just to see the creature finish the meal. He also reveals that since the raw meat ran out, he prepared a special substitute for the fox. Handing over some dried strips, the chef asks Grawl to let him know what she thinks of this new treat. Outside the window, the fox lets out a soft cry as it waits for its benefactor. Grawl stands ready at the window with the food container, watching his small visitor. He reminds himself to keep his distance, noting that she still hasn't fully let her guard down. Although he longs to touch her soft fur, he acknowledges that she doesn't fully trust him yet despite seeming relaxed. Determined to make progress, Grawl announces to himself that today he has something special. He extends his hand through the window, offering the new treat directly to the surprised fox. Gazing down at the hesitant creature, the commander gently assures the fox that he has no intention of harming it. He speaks softly to the wary animal, promising safety and emphasizing that no one will do anything horrible to it. A sudden rustle breaks the silence, catching the commander's attention as he looks up from the windowsill. Offering a reassuring smile, the one-eyed knight tells the little fox to take its time and not feel rushed. Chaos erupts as soldiers suddenly shout about a wild dog, shattering the peaceful moment and startling both man and beast. The commander sprints into action to intercept the threat, while the fox is thrown into a state of sudden confusion and fear. Waking from the chaotic memory, the white cat finds itself sweltering in heat, groggily wondering why the air feels so oppressive. Confused by the temperature in the dead of winter, the creature tosses in its sleep, finding the warmth incredibly uncomfortable. Opening its eyes, the fox is startled to discover a roaring fireplace nearby, the source of the overwhelming heat. Realization dawns on the disoriented animal as it sits up, trying to piece together whether it was sleeping and where exactly it is. A sudden realization jolts the creature fully awake, its senses sharpening as it takes in its unfamiliar surroundings. Sniffing the air, the fox detects an unfamiliar scent and realizes with panic that the person holding it is not the one-eyed knight. A loud sneeze escapes the small animal, betraying its wakefulness to the person holding it. A voice notices the movement, asking if the little one is awake, while the fox stiffens in nervous anticipation. Looking up, the creature is greeted by the gentle smile of a female knight holding it securely in her lap. Stunned by this new development, the fox stares back, realizing for the first time that there is a woman in the fort. Overwhelmed by the creature's cuteness, the female knight gushes excitedly and pulls the fox into a tight, affectionate hug. She asks if it is still cold, while the fox mentally notes that it has never seen this lady knight before. Despite sitting right next to the fireplace, the spirit fox feels a strange disconnect, unable to truly get warm from the fire. Although its human soul would have loved the pampering, the fox's instincts remain high, refusing to let its guard down easily. Panic sets in as the creature frantically looks around for the one-eyed knight, terrified and desperate to escape the stranger's grasp. Sensing the animal's fear, the woman offers a reassuring smile and softly promises that she isn't going to hurt it. As she pets its fur, the fox screams internally that while it knows she is kind, the unfamiliar smells and surroundings are terrifying. Identifying itself as a snow spirit, the creature realizes that fire and fireplaces are completely alien and incompatible with its nature. The heat feels unbearable to its snowy body, acknowledging that while a human might find it cozy, it only feels discomfort. Unable to endure the stifling temperature a second longer, The fox reaches its limit and prepares to bolt. The woman tries to call it back, concerned that the corner of the room is too cold for the small animal. Rejecting the offer, the fox mentally insists it isn't cold, though it admits its damp fur is still a bit of a nuisance. Ignoring her attempts to dry it, the white fox scampers away across the floor to put distance between itself and the heat. Huddled in the corner, the creature watches as the saddened knight apologizes and asks if she is really that scary. From its safe distance, the fox thinks that her appearance isn't the problem, but rather the fact that she is a complete stranger. Looking up at the towering human, the tiny creature adds that the sheer size of these people is intimidating enough on its own. The captain acknowledges the creature's wild nature, understanding that it is only natural for a fox to be afraid of him. Tina ponders aloud, asking the small animal what the best method would be to finally get it to lower its guard. The little fox peeks cautiously from behind the doorframe, letting out a soft sound of surprise as it spots the one-eyed knight. Resigned to the situation, the captain admits that the fox is afraid of people and that even his efforts have failed to win its trust. Tina apologizes to the fox for keeping it so late, while the creature realizes the strange female knight was only trying to take care of it. Upon seeing the one-eyed knight entering the room, the fox feels a sudden wave of gladness wash over it. The creature pauses, genuinely surprised by the overwhelming sense of relief it feels at his presence. While Tina suggests keeping the fox until it is older, the captain argues that it might be kinder to let the terrified animal go. Terrified by the thought of another wild dog attack, the fox decides that the familiar captain is a safer bet than the unknown. The captain dismisses the idea of trust, insisting she only wants food, but Tina immediately catches on and asks if he has been feeding her. To everyone's surprise, the fox dashes across the floor straight toward the captain, prompting Tina to cheer in validation. The creature remembers the moment the captain jumped into the freezing pond to save its life, recognizing his sacrifice. Determined to show its gratitude, the fox decides that the time to act is right now. Shedding its wariness, the fox resolves to abandon its animal instincts because it knows deep down he is not a bad person. Rubbing against his boot, the spirit fox worries about whether his clothes have dried yet and tries to handle some of the moisture. Tina squeals that it looks like love, while the fox simply sniffs the captain, comforted by his usual scent. The captain tries to deny the affection, insisting gloomily that the animal is only expecting him to feed her. He suddenly freezes, realizing that she has never approached him this closely before without the incentive of food. Holding the jerky, he convinces himself that the savory smell is the only reason she is near, feeling he doesn't deserve her trust. The fox continues to stay close, wanting to thank him for saving her life and feeling safer by his side. She no longer fears his touch, knowing that those big hands were the ones that pulled her from danger. The captain tries to offer the jerky, confused when she ignores the treat to focus entirely on him. Tina observes the interaction with a smile, pointing out to her superior that the fox genuinely likes him. She chides the oblivious captain, explaining that the creature understands perfectly well that he saved its life. Grateful for the translation, the fox barks a thank you to Tina for speaking up on its behalf. Slowly, the captain reaches his hand down toward the small white fox, offering a gentle touch instead of food. Tina laughs and declares she is jealous, while the captain covers his face to hide his overwhelming emotion. Overcome by the moment, the captain shields his eyes, silently processing the bond he has finally formed with the little creature. The fox looks up at him with wide, trusting eyes, waiting patiently by his side. Tina introduces herself properly, assuring the fox that she isn't a bad person either and hopes for forgiveness soon. She suggests that if the fox isn't hungry, it should get some rest since the hour is getting late. Warning the little one to stay safe, she reminds them that dangerous wild dogs can infiltrate the training grounds just as they did today. The female knight squeals uncontrollably at the creature's cuteness, while the commander reminds her to maintain composure. He states grimly that they cannot simply abandon the small animal outside to be devoured by wild dogs. Crouching down, he vows to care for the fox until it is grown, despite his doubts about raising a wild beast among humans. The fox silently accepts the offer, deciding that the safety of the building is far better than the cold outside. However, a pang of loneliness strikes as it thinks that true happiness would only come if its mother returned. Running through the halls, the fox ponders the future, realizing it will eventually have to say goodbye to the one-eyed knight. The thought of leaving the man who has cared for it brings a wave of sadness, and the fox admits it will miss him. Later, the commander leads the fox to a quiet corner and announces that this will be its sleeping area from now on. He tells the creature to wait a moment and steps into a storage room, leaving the fox curious. The door shuts with a click, leaving the small animal alone in the middle of the vast floor. Staring at the closed door, the white fox sits motionless, waiting for his return. Boredom sets in, and the creature begins to gnaw idly at a pillar to pass the time. The door handle turns, and the commander reemerges with a look of accomplishment on his face. A happy squeak escapes the fox as it looks up, sensing something good is about to happen. Smiling broadly, the commander asks how this is for joy, clearly proud of what he has retrieved. The fox follows close at his heels, its tail wagging as he carries the object to a suitable spot. He sets down a woven basket, and the fox approaches cautiously to investigate the new item. Looking inside, the creature is amazed to find a soft, checkered bed prepared just for it. The commander watches affectionately as the fox sniffs the fabric, checking the scent of its new nest. As the animal climbs in, he fusses over the blanket, tucking it in here and there to ensure maximum comfort. Buried deep in the soft layers, the fox lets out a satisfied hum, feeling completely snug and secure. The commander beams at his handiwork, declaring the situation great as he admires the cozy scene. He bids the little one good night, his voice soft as the animal settles down for sleep. Breathing deeply, the fox closes its eyes, drifting off into a peaceful slumber within the warm basket. A hand reaches out tentatively, hovering over the sleeping form as the commander watches in silence. Very gently, he places his palm on the fox's head, stroking its fur with a tender, rhythmic motion. Through its drowsiness, the fox realizes with a start that this is the very first time the man has actually petted it. Feeling the commander's warm hand and seeing his gentle smile, the fox decides it is no longer afraid of him. Suddenly, the creature's eyes snap open in panic, realizing that the pounding of its own heart is making it impossible to sleep. Morning sunlight bathes the stone walls of the northern fort as birds chirp in the crisp winter air. The small white fox lets out a massive yawn, waking up from its slumber in the safety of the indoors. It shakes its body vigorously within the basket, fluffing up its fur after drying off from the previous day's events. The fox admires its own coat, proudly noting that it is completely dry and back to its fluffy, pristine condition. A sudden realization strikes the small creature, causing it to freeze and look upward with wide eyes as it senses a presence. The fox jumps in shock, its fur standing on end as it notices a presence sleeping right next to its basket. Grawl lies fast asleep in the bed, letting out a low grumble as he rests with a furrowed brow. The fox stares at him nervously, observing that even his sleeping face is scary and intense. It finds his expression so intimidating that it wonders if his sleeping face is actually scarier than his waking one. The fox reasons that no assassin would dare attack him, but then paranoia sets in as it wonders if he is actually awake and waiting to strike. Suddenly, Grawl's single eye snaps open with a sharp sound, confirming the fox's fears. The terrified fox lets out a squeak of pure panic, freezing in place as the knight wakes up. Grawl shifts in the bed, the sheets rustling as he begins to sit up while the fox watches warily. The knight lets out a long yawn, shaking off the remnants of sleep as he rises. He scratches his head groggily, sitting on the edge of the bed while the fox observes him from the basket. Grawl finally notices the small creature staring at him and turns his gaze downward. He smiles gently, explaining that he brought the fox inside to protect it during the night. Grawl bids the fox a good morning, leaving the small animal surprised by his gentle demeanor despite his scary appearance. The fox internally admits that it was significantly more scared than usual when he first woke up. As Grawl sits quietly, the fox resolves to try its best not to be so frightened of him tomorrow. Grawl reaches his hand out slowly toward the fox, causing the animal to watch his movements closely. He gently places his hand on the fox's head, petting it with a soft touch that makes the fox squeak. However, Grawl's expression turns to one of concern as he feels the animal's fur. He strokes the fox's cheek and neck, verifying the temperature of its skin with a worried look. Grawl asks if the fox is cold, noting with concern that its body still feels chilly to the touch. The fox leans into the touch but thinks to itself that it is not cold at all. It explains internally that its body is naturally cold because it is a snow spirit, not because of the incident in the pond yesterday. The small fox fidgets and squeaks, unable to bear the fuss being made over its condition any longer. Desperate to prove its health, the creature scrambles out of the basket and insists that it is completely fine. It dashes in circles around the room, showing off its returned energy to the skeptical knight. The fox picks up speed, blurring across the floor to demonstrate that its vitality has fully returned. Suddenly, a large hand swoops down and effortlessly snatches the zooming animal in mid-stride. Grawl holds the fox steady, admitting that while he sees it's fine, he was just starting to enjoy the quiet. He gazes at the squirming creature with a soft, amused expression, his single eye crinkling gently. Defeated by his grip, the fox sits obediently on the floor and looks up with innocent, wide eyes. The scene shifts to the fox peeking out from under a blanket, watching Grawl as he prepares for the day. The fox lets out a silent scream of shock, realizing Grawl is changing his clothes right in front of it. Blushing furiously, the fox buries its face in the fabric, chanting internally that it didn't look at anything. It retreats fully into the basket, pulling the blanket over its head to hide from the awkward indecency. Grawl, now fully dressed, remarks that it is a bit early but decides to head out for his training anyway. He pauses at the door, glancing back at the basket where the flustered fox is still hiding. He promises to be back in a little while so they can have breakfast together before heading out. The fox pokes its head out of the basket, its ears twitching as it listens to the knight's retreating footsteps. Grawl opens the door and steps out, leaving the warm room for the freezing morning air. As soon as the door clicks shut, the fox hops out of the basket with sudden determination. Grawl stops in the hallway, his instincts flaring as he senses a small presence trailing him. He turns to find the fox standing there and asks in exasperation when exactly it managed to sneak out. Grawl firmly tells the animal it cannot come, waving his hand to shoo it back into the safety of the room. The fox stubbornly holds its ground, thinking that it has only ever seen the knight through a window before. It reasons that since it isn't working today, there is no harm in staying by his side to watch him. Recognizing the creature's resolve, Grawl sighs in defeat and allows the fox to tag along. The fox lets out a wide yawn as they step outside, the crisp air waking it up completely. It steps onto the snow, noting that the melted surface from yesterday has frozen into a hard crust. Despite the chill, the fox trots confidently, reminding itself that as a snow spirit, it is immune to the cold. It looks up at the frozen trees, feeling sympathy for the humans who must struggle to breathe in such harsh air. The fox pauses to watch Grawl, who has already begun his rigorous training routine in the distance. Grawl runs laps around the courtyard, his breath pluming in the icy air as he maintains a steady pace. He pushes through the cold with disciplined focus, his movements sharp and rhythmic against the winter backdrop. Finishing his run, Grawl stretches his arms high, cooling down from the intense workout while the fox watches in admiration. The one-eyed knight trains shirtless in the freezing cold, muttering through grit teeth that his body is supposed to be hard enough to withstand it. Watching in disbelief, the little fox panics and mentally begs him to stop stripping in such harsh weather. Staring at his bare torso exposed to the elements, the creature wonders if the knight is actually made of steel. The fox questions if he performs this grueling physical routine every single day in the middle of winter. Suddenly, a flock of small birds descends from the sky, chirping loudly and landing directly on the fox. The fox struggles to shake them off, annoyed by the birds bothering it while it tries to observe the knight. It recalls that animals were supposed to be scared of spirits like itself and its mother. The fox realizes sadly that apparently only its mother was feared, as even little birds are attacking it now. A memory surfaces of a woman telling the fox that it must become much stronger than it is now. The knight continues his shirtless run through the snow, oblivious to the cold biting at his skin. Determined not to be left behind, the little fox scampers quickly after him through the deep drifts. The knight maintains a steady pace, his breath visible in the air as the fox struggles to keep up with his stride. Later inside the fort, Tina stands in the hallway, noting the silence of the early morning. She reflects that the commander across the hall has been busy since early morning. She observes that the branch chief's office next door is also quiet, as those two are always up early. A door opens and Kix steps out, yawning widely and looking exhausted. Tina greets him, noting that he looks incredibly sleepy. Kix explains he just finished a night shift and is heading straight to eat and sleep. He complains that border security work makes it hard to find time for anything else. Kix dismisses the rumors of spirits in the snowy mountains, doubting anyone would risk their lives to cross. Tina reminds him that the king himself ordered them to protect the mountain, making it an important mission. As they enter the mess hall, they both freeze, noticing something unusual about the atmosphere. Kix asks why everyone is acting so weird, sensing the strange tension in the room. They spot the commander sitting at a table by the window, with a small white creature on the floor nearby. Kix squints and asks if it is a hairball, while Tina realizes with a gasp what it actually is. The little fox, whom Tina identifies as Milchan, looks up with wide, innocent eyes. Kix finally recognizes the little fox, surprised to see it inside the mess hall. He demands to know why it is inside and with the commander, prompting Tina to explain there is a reason. The commander stands up, casting a shadow over the small fox sitting at his feet. Kix stiffens and greets the commander with a respectful good morning. Turning his attention to the animal, Kix addresses Milchan, reminding her that it is him. He insists that they met last night, but the fox simply stares at him in silence. Tina blushes furiously while looking under the table, overwhelmed by the cuteness of the fox as Grawl watches her reaction. Grawl turns to the young knight and asks if he was the one who actually named the creature. The knight explains that he just started calling her the first thing that came to mind when he saw her on the property, prompting Grawl to ask why he chose Mil. Tina chimes in with a smile, explaining that she calls the fox Milchan because its fur is as white as milk. As the knight agrees that it's an easy name to remember, Grawl realizes with a start that he completely forgot to give the fox a name himself. The fox stares blankly at the group, letting out a soft sound as it processes the conversation about its new identity. Tina beams at Grawl, expressing her happiness that the name has been accepted, while Grawl smiles back gently. Grawl points out that the knight never asked about naming it, to which the subordinate retorts that Grawl never even told him he was feeding the fox. The enthusiastic knight declares that this adorable creature should definitely become the official mascot of the northern fort. He complains that it's unfair for Grawl to keep the fox all to himself when everyone else wants to see it, but Grawl sternly orders him to start training after his night shift. Ignoring the order, the knight crouches down and calls out to the fox with a wide grin, beckoning Mil to come to him. The fox flinches in surprise at the sudden loud noise and attention, its ears perking up in alarm. It quickly shuffles backward under the table to hide, leaving the knight disappointed while Grawl continues eating calmly. Tina scolds the knight for scaring the poor animal, while Grawl instructs him not to speak so loudly. Undeterred, the knight reaches his hand under the table, whining that she looks so comfortable and he wants to touch her too. Tina reprimands him again, insisting that he needs to take his time if he wants to be friends, noting that even she hasn't gotten permission yet. She glances up and warns the others that more people are coming into the mess hall. Tina suggests it's time to take the fox back to Grawl's room since she isn't used to being around so many people yet. Her expression turns serious as she mentions that there is something else they need to discuss regarding the situation. The knight asks if she intends to talk to him about it today, specifically wondering if the branch chief knows about the fox. The fox looks up curiously at the mention of the branch chief, sensing the shift in the conversation's tone. Tina looks uneasy while the knight scratches his head, realizing the potential trouble they might be in. The knight tries to lighten the mood, laughing that he wishes he could see the Ice Branch Chief's reaction when he discovers Mil. The fox listens intently from its hiding spot, catching the new title and wondering who this person is. The head chef interrupts the moment by asking Grawl if the fox liked the special meal he prepared, to which Grawl nods. The fox trots away happily, leaving the smiling chef and the crowd of blushing soldiers who are admiring it from afar. As it walks, the fox beams with joy, celebrating the fact that it has finally been given a name. It proudly accepts the identity of Mil and acknowledges Tina as its godmother. The fox reflects that Mil is a perfect nickname since its real name is Milferia, and being compared to milk is a sweet sentiment. It feels relieved that it wasn't given a generic name like White or Little, based solely on its appearance. Soldiers salute Grawl as he passes, wishing the commander a good morning, which confuses the fox who thought Milk was a cheap name. Grawl smiles at his men, while the fox realizes it doesn't actually know the one-eyed knight's real name. Trotting beside his boots, the fox notes that everyone calls him Commander, confirming he is an important person. It recalls hearing his name earlier but still doesn't know his character, and now it wonders about the Ice Branch Chief mentioned before. The fox looks up at Grawl, pondering the difference between the Iron Commander beside it and the mysterious Ice Chief. The scene cuts to a stark white background, emphasizing the mystery of the unseen character. A hand pulls back a curtain in a high window, revealing the back of a figure with dark hair looking down. The dark-haired man gazes out at the courtyard with a cold expression, murmuring about a little fox he has spotted. The one-eyed knight informs the small spirit that he will return at noon before heading out. The white fox stares up at him in silence, processing the information with a steady gaze. Left with its thoughts, the spirit wonders what happens to it when the knight leaves, knowing he will be gone for quite a while. It recalls the rumors of the Ice Branch chief and admits to feeling a spark of enthusiasm about seeing him in action. The knight explains that he makes rounds on horseback with his men and skeptically asks if the small creature can even sit on a horse. Undeterred, the spirit confidently asserts that one can never know what is possible without trying. The knight admits he gets along well with the stable horses while the fox imagines itself balancing perfectly on a steed. His expression turns apologetic as he ultimately decides against it, fearing the spirit would interrupt his work. Defeated, the spirit accepts the rejection with a slumped posture, murmuring that it cannot be helped. The knight looks down with a softened, almost guilty expression before making his final departure. He leans in to tuck the spirit into its basket, repeating his promise to return by noon. Annoyed by the repetition, the fox grumbles that he already said that and insists it will be all right. The knight turns his back and walks toward the door, leaving the small creature behind in the room. From the doorway, he emphasizes one last time that he will be back at noon, causing the fox to sigh at his circular conversation. With the knight gone, the fox curls up tightly in its basket and drifts into a deep slumber. Outside the castle walls, the sky is gray and quiet as the morning passes peacefully. The room remains still and silent, the only movement coming from the small fox sleeping in its basket. Waking up later, the spirit reflects that it managed to sleep a lot last night despite being told to stay quiet. Restless energy kicks in as the fox rolls around in the basket, trying to find a comfortable position. Boredom leads to chewing on the edge of the basket as the spirit tries to entertain itself. Finally giving up on the basket, the fox stares blankly ahead and explicitly declares that it is incredibly bored. It climbs out of the basket with a long stretch, seeking something to break the monotony. A glance at the window reveals falling snow, causing the spirit to perk up with sudden excitement. The fox watches intently, noting that while it isn't a storm, the sight of snow always brings excitement. It observes the large snowflakes fluttering irregularly rather than falling as simple powder. Turning back to the room, the spirit wonders what to do next and decides it is tired of simply watching the window. With a burst of playful energy, the fox jumps onto the bed and proudly announces that it has climbed a mountain. The fox surveys the furniture in the room, deciding that there is no point in wasting any time. Unable to resist the comfort, the creature dives headfirst into the mattress, reveling in how incredibly soft and fluffy it is. Bursting with energy, the fox bounces playfully across the bedding. It notes that the one-eyed knight's scent is everywhere, admitting that climbing up here was originally just a mischievous prank. Suddenly, its attention shifts to an object resting on the desk nearby. Curiosity piqued, the fox stares intently at the mysterious items on the desk. Focusing its gaze, it identifies the stack of heavy objects as books. A thought strikes the creature, wondering if it possesses the ability to read the written language of this world. Determined to find out, the fox approaches the wooden chair to begin its ascent. It peeks over the edge, gauging the difficulty of the climb. Clinging to the chair leg, the fox doubts if it can actually scale the slippery surface. Rejecting failure, the creature steels its resolve and decides to push forward. With a burst of effort, it launches itself upward, digging its claws into the wood. Panic sets in as its grip falters and it begins to slip backwards. Straining with every ounce of strength, the fox screams internally to hang on. Finally, with a heave, it manages to haul its small body onto the seat. Though its paws are shaking from the exertion, the fox celebrates its triumph with a proud declaration of success. Looking up at the desk, it calculates that the jump from the chair is an easy distance to cover. With a graceful leap, the creature lands atop the high desk. It admires the exciting view, noting that it rarely gets the chance to look down on the world from such a height. Stepping forward, the fox focuses its attention on the letters written on the page. The symbols appear alien and completely incomprehensible. It stares harder at the text, trying to force meaning from the shapes. To its dismay, the creature realizes it has absolutely no clue what the letters mean, not even from its previous life memories. Resigned to the difficulty, the fox sighs that it will simply have to study the language. It briefly wonders if its snow spirit powers could provide a magical translation shortcut, but the attempt fails. A memory surfaces of its mother holding it, reminding the fox that it learned spoken language by listening to her. It reflects that whether due to its species or past life, it was a much faster learner than most human babies. Glancing back at the book, the fox accepts the hard truth that it absolutely cannot read a single word. Comforting itself, the creature decides that when its mother returns, she will be the one to teach it how to read. As it turns to leave, its fluffy tail accidentally swipes against an ink bottle left on the desk. The fox freezes in horror as the black liquid spills out, staining the surface in an expanding dark puddle. The small spirit freezes in absolute horror as it stares at the tipped-over ink bottle leaking onto the desk. Its eyes widen in sheer terror as the dark liquid begins to pool and spread dangerously close to the edge. Screaming in panic, the fox watches helplessly as the ink invades the table and threatens everything in its path. Desperately trying to save the books, the spirit shoves them aside with all its might to push them out of harm's way. The heavy volumes tumble off the edge of the desk and crash onto the floor with a loud, chaotic thud. Silence falls over the room as the fox peers down from the desk to assess the aftermath of its frantic rescue attempt. The spirit nervously peeks over the edge, causing its ears to twitch as it surveys the scattered items below. Books lie scattered in a disorderly heap, their pages splayed open on the wooden floorboards. Trying to comfort itself, the fox trembles and reasons that at least the books are physically intact on the floor. It breathes a sigh of relief, noting that the precious volumes managed to escape the black ink menace entirely. However, the spirit's face pales as it realizes the ink and papers on the desk are completely ruined and out of control. Panic sets in as the fox remembers the night will return at noon and dreads the inevitable consequences of this disaster. Desperate to fix something, the spirit resolves to at least organize the fallen books before he gets back. Grunting with effort, the small creature pushes against the heavy covers to stack them neatly back into place. Its heart stops as it spots a dark smudge on the cover of a book it thought was safe and realizes it is stained with ink. Scanning the room with growing dread, the fox notices another black stain marring the floor nearby. Horror mounts as it spots yet another splotch of ink further away from the desk, creating a trail of evidence. The spirit freezes in sudden realization as the gravity of the mess begins to sink in. Slowly lifting a paw, the fox inspects the bottom of its foot with mounting dread. To its horror, the paw pad is completely coated in thick black ink, which explains the mysterious stains. Stepping back in shock, the spirit inadvertently leaves a fresh black paw print on the pristine floorboards. The fox stares at the trail of black prints it has created and tries vainly to convince itself that this is somehow fine. Frantically searching the room, the spirit realizes there is nothing suitable to wipe up the ink, and panic rises. With no other option, the fox apologizes to the blanket before dragging it off the bed to use as a makeshift rag. Dragging the heavy fabric across the floor, the spirit scrubs frantically to remove the stubborn stains. Pausing to check its progress, the fox lifts the edge of the blanket with hopeful eyes to see the result. The spirit's hope shatters as it reveals a smeared black mess that looks significantly worse than before. Staring at the disaster, the fox stands stunned as the ink drips from its soaked fur and the ruined blanket. It belatedly realizes that thick blankets are terrible at absorbing liquid and only spread the mess further around. Completely defeated, the small spirit sits amidst the chaos, asking itself helplessly what it should do now. A terrifying vision fills its mind of the one-eyed knight returning to find his room destroyed and becoming furious. Panic completely takes over as the fox runs in circles, screaming internally at the impending doom. A sudden realization strikes the small white fox, leaving it frozen in shock as the gravity of the situation hits home. Eyes wide and pupils dilated, the creature stares ahead in absolute horror at what it has done to the room. Unaware of the chaos awaiting him, the scarred knight rides through the snowy forest with his squad on their return journey. Reaching his quarters, the commander places a gloved hand on the door, preparing to enter his sanctuary. He worries that the fox, still unused to living indoors, might be feeling shy or lonely left all alone in his room. Anxious thoughts race through his mind about whether he swept the floor properly or left anything dangerous behind for the small creature. Opening the door, he is greeted by silence and an ominously empty basket bed near the heater. He steps fully into the room, scanning the area with a concerned expression as he looks for his companion. Disaster strikes his vision as he spots a spilled inkwell and a chaotic trail of black paw prints covering the desk and floor. The knight stoops to pick up the ink cap, his expression unreadable as he assesses the extent of the damage. He stands amidst the carnage of stained papers and ruined floorboards, exhaling a silent sigh at the mess. His sharp eye catches a suspicious lump under the rug where the culprit is attempting to hide from justice. Lowering himself to the floor, he brings his face level with the ground to peer into the darkness beneath the fabric. He calls out the name Mill, causing the guilty lump to flinch violently in terror at being discovered. Under the rug, the fox trembles uncontrollably as the giant human face peers in to inspect her. To her surprise, The knight smiles gently and assures her that he is not mad about the accident. Taking the blame upon himself for leaving the ink jar out, he tells her it is time to come out of hiding. He reaches in and firmly grabs the scruff of the hiding creature's neck to retrieve her. With a smooth motion, he drags the resisting fox out from her sanctuary and into the light. He lifts her into the air, inspecting the ink-stained culprit with a bemused expression as she dangles helplessly. Holding her paw, he notes that her limbs are completely dyed black from the accident. He explains that they need to clean the ink off before their planned visit to the branch chief, relieved she isn't hurt. Hugging her to his chest, he decides to go get some hot water while she clings to his uniform. The fox looks utterly defeated, her ears drooping in shame and exhaustion from the ordeal. She mourns the loss of her earlier enthusiasm, terrified that her dirty feet would have left a terrible impression on the branch chief. The knight marches into the communal bathhouse, startling the soldiers who are already washing there. As his men cheerfully greet their commander, the fox realizes with horror that she has been brought to a public bath. Panicking at the sight of naked men, she screams internally that this view is too much for a young maiden's eyes. Ignoring the chaos, the knight sits down on the floor and carefully wipes her ink-stained paws with a wet cloth. The scarred knight apologizes to the small fox for failing to get all the ink out of her paw. He hopes the stain will wear off naturally while she runs around in the snow outside. If the stain remains, he fears the evidence of his clumsy blunder will last forever. He notes they clean the floor, but the ink stain on the desk refuses to come out. Since the desk was old anyway, he decides this is a good opportunity to replace it. He apologizes profusely for making the fox spend her precious break time cleaning up the mess. With his break almost over, the knight announces he is going to say hello to the branch chief. He warns the fox not to bite the chief's hand, as he is the most important person in the fort. The fox ponders the ominous title of the rumored ice branch chief. The knight asks if she can climb the stairs as they ascend toward the office. The fox wonders if this chief is even stronger and older than the powerful one-eyed knight. Her imagination runs wild, picturing a terrifying bear of a man as the leader. Suddenly nervous, the knight frantically tries to remember which paw was stained with ink. They arrive at the large double doors of the chief's office, standing tall and imposing. The knight knocks firmly on the door while the fox looks up in confusion. A voice commands them to enter, but the terrified fox covers her eyes and insists she isn't ready. As the door opens, the knight steps inside while the fox sneaks fearfully behind his boots. Trembling with fear, the fox braces herself to face the terrifying bear she imagined. She peeks out cautiously from behind the knight's leg to assess the threat. Instead of a beast, she detects a fresh, soapy scent wafting through the air. The knight stands at attention and respectfully greets the chief. A hand elegantly places a teacup onto a saucer with a soft clink. The branch chief is revealed to be a composed, handsome man with dark hair, sitting calmly at his desk. The fox's mental image of a raging bear shatters instantly as she stares at the refined human before her. Stunned, she questions internally if this elegant man is really the branch chief. The knight mentions the fox cub he spoke of earlier, while the fox notes the chief is younger than the knight. Bringing her forward, the knight asks for official permission to take the fox into custody at the fort. The one-eyed knight gasps in shock as he discovers the chaotic ink spill covering the desk. The branch chief enters the room, and the fox is stunned by how his cold, imposing presence perfectly matches the nickname Ice. Sensing the man's displeasure, the terrified fox feels its heart pounding as it realizes it is definitely not welcome here. Despite the tension, the fox internally rallies, asserting confidence in its own appearance to calm its nerves. Convinced that no one could possibly find it ugly or be repulsed by such cuteness, the fox expects the chief to simply order it out. The fox's optimism falters as the silence stretches on, making it question its earlier assumption. Switching tactics, the fox plays the victim, mentally lamenting its status as a poor, homeless creature with a mother away in King's Landing. The fox decides to be a good girl and not sob excessively, though it guiltily admits to smearing ink all over the floor. Desperate to prove its worth, the fox mentally lists its skills, such as digging holes and running energetically through the snow. The branch chief remains silent, his sharp eye scrutinizing the situation with an unreadable expression. Turning to the nervous knight, the chief breaks the silence by asking him directly for his opinion on the matter. The chief's expression darkens into a scowl, radiating an intensity that fills the room with pressure. Sweat drops down the knight's face as he struggles to find the right words under his superior's glare. A tense silence follows, with a focus narrowing on the subtle shift in the character's expressions. The chief presses harder, asking, "Is that it?" and demanding a proper response from the hesitating knight. Frustrated, the chief snaps at the knight, accusing him of holding back despite being the one who was previously so repulsed. The knight finally smiles and defuses the tension by simply agreeing that the fox is cute, prompting a grumpy question from the chief about his talkativeness. The chief looks away with a huff, while the fox trembles nervously, unsure of its fate. With a sigh, the chief closes his eyes, seemingly resigning himself to the situation. He explains that the fort's harsh, snowy environment wears on everyone, and he sees no harm in the men finding comfort in animals. Acknowledging the soldiers' hearts and souls, the chief admits that the fox's presence will likely help morale. However, he issues a stern warning that he will change his mind immediately if the creature interferes with their mission or duties. Declaring that to be his final opinion, the chief falls silent, leaving the fox to process the verdict. The fox quickly deduces that this conditions means it has permission to stay, provided it is protected. The chief clarifies that this arrangement is only valid if Grail is willing to take full responsibility for the animal. Turning his head sharply, the chief states clearly that he will not be getting involved personally. The knight smiles broadly, accepting the condition with a bingo and thanking the chief for his leniency. Relieved, the fox thanks God for the reprieve, though it notes that the chief doesn't seem to like it very much. A quiet thought lingers in the air, suggesting that despite the cold exterior, the chief might actually be nice. The fox concludes that the chief is simply a leader capable of making impartial decisions for the good of the fort. Grail opens the door, and the fox trots out, following the knight away from the intimidating office. Pouting slightly, the fox realizes it needs to revise its self-perception, as its cuteness didn't have the immediate magical effect it expected. Milfiria realizes that unlike the one-eyed knight and Tina, not everyone finds animals cute, and she apologizes internally for getting carried away with her antics. The little fox laments that despite being a snow spirit with past life memories, she currently lacks special powers and is nothing more than a simple ball of fur. Self-doubt consumes her as she panics over her inability to contribute and the mess she made with the spilled ink, feeling completely out of control. A voice interrupts her spiral of self-pity, pausing the chaotic thoughts swirling in her head. The one-eyed knight speaks up, promising to figure out a solution for her boredom later that afternoon. He accurately guesses that she dreads being left alone again, and the little fox silently agrees with a sullen expression. Desperate to shake off her gloom, Milfiria yearns to run around rather than wallow in self-doubt, while the knight watches her restlessness. She resolves to fulfill her role as a companion for everyone as the leader suggested, puffing out her chest to show her determination. The one-eyed knight chuckles at her visible reaction to the word alone, teasing that she is incredibly easy to read. When he suggests going outside to play, Milfiria's tail wags traitorously against her will, proving to her that spirits cannot lie with their bodies. The knight reasons that playing during the day is safe since the dangerous wild dogs only emerge after dark. He reassures her that guards and trainees are nearby to help if any threats appear, and Milfiria nods enthusiastically at the safety measures. His large hand gently ruffles the fur on her head, offering physical comfort and affection to the worried creature. A shadow crosses the knight's face as he wishes Mil were human so he could keep her safely indoors, even if it meant cramping her freedom. He reminds her that she must learn about the world's dangers since she will eventually have to return to the wild, casting a somber tone over the conversation. He insists she needs to learn hunting skills, but the well-fed fox dismisses the idea immediately since she has no need to hunt when she isn't hungry. A wave of sadness hits her as she realizes treated pets aren't told they must return to the wild, highlighting the temporary nature of her stay. She contemplates the difficulty of eventually returning to her mother versus the safety of the fort, and the thought of staying with the knight indefinitely crosses her mind. Pushing the melancholy thoughts away, she tells herself it is okay and refocuses on the present moment. She looks up at the knight with wide, trusting eyes, radiating pure innocence and affection. Milfiria admits internally that it is too late to detach herself because she already loves the knight deeply, just as he asks if she is happy. She compares her affection for him to her love for fluffy snow and jerky, placing him on the same pedestal as her mother in her heart. Recalling that the branch chief called him Grail, Milfiria feels a surge of happiness to finally know the knight's real name. Despite learning his name, she decides that One-Eyed Knight suits him best and resolves to keep using the nickname she is used to. She appreciates the nickname Mil, but wishes she could communicate that her true name is actually Milfiria. Her thoughts drift back to her mother, wondering how much time will pass before they are reunited. The inevitable goodbye weighs on her mind as she frets over how to convey her farewells without speaking the human language. Grail snaps her back to reality with strict safety rules, forbidding her from leaving the property or entering the pond because he would worry if she disappeared. Milfiria looks at him with a deadpan expression, realizing he is still overwhelmingly the worrywart, and accepts his overprotective nature. He encourages her to play to lift the mood, but a lingering sadness remains within her despite his efforts to cheer her up. Promising to return before dark, the knight watches as Milfiria frolics happily in the snow to shake off her worries. From the window, the small white form of the fox can be seen diving and plowing enthusiastically through the deep snowdrifts. A mysterious dark-haired man observes the scene from a window, his expression cold and calculating as he watches the fox play. The small white fox proudly presents the fruits of its labor, shouting for someone to behold its work. Watching the knights train cheerfully in the background, the creature realizes that not having to hide allows it to play as much as it pleases. Bursting with joy, the fox dives headfirst into the powder, declaring that being outside in the snow is the absolute best. It reflects on how silly it was to sulk earlier about eventually parting ways with the one-eyed knight given how much fun this is. Attempting to join in the winter fun, the fox tries to roll a snowball but finds itself physically unable to do so. The situation quickly deteriorates as the creature realizes its fur has become completely impacted with heavy snow, making it hard to walk. Rolling uncontrollably, the fox declares itself a snow spirit while screaming for the snow to get away from it. Completely immobilized by the clumps of ice stuck to its fur, the fox topples onto its back with a pathetic cry of defeat. A loud, booming laugh erupts from above as someone witnesses the creature's clumsy struggle. Glaring at the two knights standing by the doorway, the humiliated fox accuses them of laughing at its misery. Desperate and embarrassed, the fox shouts that it needs help and insists the situation is not funny at all. The dark-haired knight looks down with a friendly expression and asks if the fox is unable to get the snow off by itself. He crouches down to eye level, offering assistance to the snow-covered creature. The fox hesitates, thinking warily that it does not know this man at all. Trembling slightly, the creature admits internally that the situation feels a little scary. However, it reasons that if he can remove the snow, it would be appreciated, as the alternative is turning into a snowman. Observing the man carefully, the fox notes that he is patiently waiting for it to come to him rather than approaching forcefully. It decides that if he had lunged it would have run away, but his stillness makes him feel safe enough to approach. Taking a leap of faith, the small fox cautiously steps forward toward the waiting knight. The knight smiles warmly, remarking that thanks to the commander, the fox seems to be getting used to people now. Approaching with a stiff gait, the fox denies this internally, thinking that it is actually still extremely nervous. It realizes that it has never allowed anyone to get this close before, with the sole exception of the one-eyed knight. Trusting its instincts that the man doesn't smell dangerous, the fox asks him to please remove the snow. The knight instructs the creature to stay put as he reaches out a large hand toward its fur. With gentle fingers, he begins picking the stubborn ice clumps out of the fox's thick coat. The second knight watches the process and comments that his comrade is surprisingly good at this task. The dark-haired knight explains that his parents have a long-haired dog, so he is used to removing snow on winter days. He finishes the job and says, "There you go," releasing the fox, which immediately scampers away. Shaking itself off, the fox tries to regain its dignity by claiming it wasn't even nervous during the encounter. Relieved of the heavy burden, the creature delights in feeling so much lighter and freer. The knight calls out a thank you and asks if the fox is going to continue playing in the snow. Giving a thumbs up, he assures the fox that they will be there until nightfall if it needs anything else. The small fox calls out to its big brother with pure joy, eager for the reunion. Sliding across the snow, the fox shouts a heartfelt thank you to the departing figure. The little creature scampers towards the castle, leaving small paw prints in the vast white snow. Beaming with contentment, the fox declares that it is truly happy. Reflecting on the day's events, the fox recalls seeking help twice, realizing how dependent it was. Sitting patiently in the snow, the fox waits for the designated pickup time to arrive. The one-eyed knight opens the door, spotting the small creature waiting outside. He asks if the little one had fun, greeting the fox with a warm expression. Bursting with excitement, the fox exclaims that it enjoyed the day immensely. The fox revels in its warm fur, realizing that it now loves the snow it used to avoid as a human. The knight looks down at the happy creature, observing its newfound love for the cold outdoors. He remarks with a smile that the fox simply prefers being outside in the elements. Seeing the knight turn to leave, the fox panics and tries to stop him, not wanting to be left alone. The knight pauses, asking if the little one has learned something new from its behavior. The fox tries to explain it just wanted to comfort him by licking his hand but couldn't reach. Understanding the gesture, the knight reaches out to gently pet the fox's head. The knight smiles softly, appreciating the clumsy attempt at comfort as he strokes the soft fur. Steeling itself, the fox prepares for whatever comes next as they enter the bustling mess hall. Two soldiers spot the pair instantly, their faces lighting up with recognition and excitement. The fox freezes as a soldier named Milchan calls out to it with overwhelming enthusiasm. The one-eyed knight greets the soldiers, who are clearly delighted to see the little furball. One soldier teases the fox about its fluffiness, asking if it has been fed properly. Without warning, the blonde soldier named Kix scoops the fox up high into the air. Terrified by the height, the fox screams internally for him to stop, flailing in panic. Kix remains oblivious to the fear, wondering why the fox is reacting this way since it should be used to people. The fox goes limp in his hands, completely overwhelmed and traumatized by the rough handling. A swift punch lands on Kix's head, punishing him for his insensitivity toward the animal. Kix yells in pain, calling his attacker an idiot while clutching his throbbing head. The fox stares at the blonde soldier, recognizing him as Kix and cementing the memory. It realizes its initial horror was justified, as Kix reminds it of the rough children from its past. Memories of past trauma flood back, comparing the soldier's energy to that of reckless kids. As the soldiers thank the commander, the fox decides firmly that it does not like Kix at all. The little white fox freezes in her tracks as she recognizes the group of intimidating men standing before her. Memories flood back of the terrifying moment when she was chased by a wild dog and these very people saved her. One of the soldiers leans in with a menacing grin that is meant to be friendly, asking if Kix bullied her. Terror seizes her tiny body as the trauma of that day resurfaces, making her tremble uncontrollably. She looks up at the towering figures and feels overwhelmed by how big and scary they appear to her small form. Although she logically knows they are nice people who helped her, her survival instincts scream at her to run away. The men notice her fear and discuss amongst themselves whether she is scared to death simply because of their villainous faces. One soldier shouts at his comrade to stop yelling, pointing out that his loud voice is the reason no one wants to talk to him. Milfiria flinches at the booming noise, confirming their suspicion that the shouting is only making her more nervous. The loud soldier quickly apologizes while stuffing his face with food, trying to lower his volume to appease the creature. A heavy silence falls over the group as they conclude she must be too scared to remember their past kindness. Tina arrives and sighs, admitting she hasn't gotten used to them either but just wanted to pet the fluffy fox. The men remind Tina that she used to be terrified of them too, and Milfiria starts to feel a pang of guilt for hurting their feelings. Tina cheerfully announces she isn't afraid anymore, while the men lament that animals fear them just as much as women and children do. Milfiria thinks desperately that she does remember that day and feels terrible for reacting with such fear despite their help. She struggles with the barrier of language, wishing she could tell them she doesn't hate them but unable to speak their words. The soldiers look at each other with resigned acceptance, noting that they have been treated like monsters their entire lives. They share stories of being mistaken for kidnappers while helping lost children or outlaws while dressed as officers. Determined to change the narrative, Milfiria forces her trembling legs to move and slowly approaches the intimidating group. She decides that words are unnecessary and resolves to show them her true feelings through a clear action. Reassuring herself that they are good people, she suppresses her fear and steps forward to make a peace offering. With a deliberate movement, she drops a precious piece of her dried meat onto the floor in front of the scary men. The soldiers stare at the jerky in confusion, asking if she really intends to give her own food to them. Milfiria confirms silently that we need to share, apologizing in her heart that the portion is so small. Realization dawns on the men as they understand this is her way of thanking them for saving her life. They are visibly moved, shocked that a creature they frightened is now showing them such genuine gratitude. The intimidating faces soften into warm smiles as they accept her gift, and the tension in the air vanishes. Milfiria looks up at them with a happy expression, conveying her thanks perfectly without uttering a single sound. The men are brought to tears by the gesture, overwhelmed by the rare feeling of being appreciated for their kindness. They eagerly ask if they can really eat it, and Tina jumps in excitedly to claim a piece for herself as well. Not wanting to leave anyone out, Milfiria scampers over to the one-eyed knight and offers him a share too. Grail smiles gently at the little fox and thanks her by name, accepting the treat with a warm expression. He pats her head affectionately, and Milfiria leans into the touch, basking in the praise and relief. The little fox feels like crying from happiness, realizing how wonderful it is to have her gratitude accepted. Grail reflects on his life, noting that he is often kind to people who never appreciate it, making this moment special. He gazes at the fox with a soft look, thinking she is incredibly cute and silently vowing to keep an eye on her. The soldiers watch the interaction, convinced that she is fond of the commander and will soon get used to them as well. The mood shifts abruptly when the Ice Branch chief appears, causing the soldiers to snap to attention and hide the meat. The dark-haired man stares intensely at the hidden food while the soldiers sweat and thank him for his hard work. He gives them a cold, unimpressed look before turning away, leaving a chill in his wake. The soldiers shiver as the temperature seems to drop, whispering that the ice chief didn't even deign to look at them. They hang their heads in embarrassment, realizing he definitely heard their silly conversation about the meat. Milfiria tilts her head in confusion, wondering who the cold stranger was and why everyone suddenly got so nervous. The small white fox holds out a paw with a deadpan expression, as if testing the humans around it. Internally, the creature decides that actually performing a trick like giving a paw would not be funny at all. A knight remarks that the fox cannot perform tricks if it hasn't been properly disciplined yet. While the one-eyed knight is busy taking a bath, the fox is left to wait with the squad. Sitting in the common room, the fox waits patiently while surrounded by the other chattering knights. Kix argues that the fox seems pretty smart, though another knight claims it is too young to think. The other knight insults the fox by saying it is cute when animals are a little dumb and clumsy. Offended, the fox fumes internally at being called a fool despite actually being a spirit. Kix praises the fox for being smart and calls it a good guy, delighting the creature. The mood shifts abruptly when Kix tries to pick the fox up unexpectedly, startling it. A long-haired knight scolds Kix, warning that holding the fox against it will make it hate him. Kix admits he has never had a dog and doesn't know how to treat animals properly. Exploring the room, the fox notices a strange gap along the base of the wall. Investigating closely, the fox sniffs the dusty hole and detects a distinct animal scent. A pair of small eyes suddenly peer back from the darkness of the hole. The fox leaps back in terror as a small creature bursts out towards the group. Chaos erupts in the common room as the knights scream that it is a rat. They realize the rodent chewed a hole right through the wall and needs to be plugged immediately. One knight wonders aloud if foxes are supposed to eat rats. The fox proves them wrong by hiding firmly behind the knights, trembling in fear. Bursting into laughter, the men tease the fox for being so surprised by a mere rat. Kix teases the fox, asking if it is embarrassed by its cowardly reaction. Furious at the mockery, the fox bites down on the knight's arm in retaliation. Undeterred, the knights continue to laugh and insist that the fox's reaction was hilarious. Pushed to the limit, the fox screams at them to shut up and forget the incident. The door suddenly creaks open, freezing the rowdy group in their tracks. The branch chief glares into the room, telling them to enjoy their time but not to make too much noise. With a stern finality, the door slams shut, leaving the room in stunned silence. The knights exhale in relief, guessing that their noise must have disturbed others who were sleeping. One knight suggests the chief wasn't mad, but rather just jealous of their fun. The fox tilts its head, confused by the suggestion that the scary man could be jealous. A realization dawns on the fox that perhaps he was envious because they were having so much fun without him. Pondering the chief's social life, the fox wonders if the rumors about him having absolutely no friends are actually true. The conversation turns to the chief's jealousy, suggesting he resents seeing others having a good time while he remains isolated. A female soldier fills the night in on the gossip, confirming that the rumors about the chief's loneliness are well known. The one-eyed knight interrupts the gossip session, announcing his return with impeccable timing. Glancing at the fox, the knight smiles knowingly, realizing he doesn't even need to ask what they were talking about. Compassion stirs within the fox, and it silently vows to befriend the lonely chief the next time their paths cross. A quiet stillness settles over the snowy landscape as the scene transitions to a peaceful morning. Waking with a start, the fox rouses itself from beneath the warm covers beside the sleeping knight. While the knight trains shirtless in the cold, the fox enjoys a meal and watches him with contentment. The fox delights in the morning routine, grateful for the knight's affection and the freedom to roam outside. Bursting with energy, the fox dives into the snowdrifts, burrowing through the white powder with joyous abandon. A misstep sends the little creature tumbling, landing on its back with a silent cheer of pure delight. Exhaustion hits instantly, and the fox flops onto the ground, realizing it has once again overdone the playing. Panting heavily, the fox struggles to catch its breath, finding it hard to even laugh after such intense running. Shame creeps in as the fox realizes it was being watched, mortified at the thought of looking like an idiot again. Defensively, the fox insists internally that it is smart enough to play without interfering with the soldier's training. Composing itself, the little fox trots away from the open grounds to seek adventure elsewhere. Entering the stables, the fox greets the horses, noting the biting cold as it inspects the residence. A large, muscular horse catches the fox's eye, its impressive stature suggesting it belongs to the one-eyed knight. The familiar scent confirms the deduction, identifying the powerful steed as the leader of the stable and the knight's mount. The horse lowers its head with a gentle gaze, and the fox wonders if the great beast is worried about its well-being. Assuring the horse it is safe, the fox wonders if the animal instinctively knows about the recent attack by wild dogs. A silent understanding passes between them, the fox feeling the horse's promise to drive away any threats that return. Though they share no spoken language, the fox feels a deep, empathetic bond with the protective creature. Attention shifts to the neighboring stall, where a horse with a beautiful face and stunning hair captivates the fox. Struck by instant infatuation, the fox stares in awe, falling in love with the magnificent animal at first sight. Identifying the scent of the branch chief, the fox notes how incredibly clean and soap-like this horse smells compared to the others. Eager to make a new friend, the fox approaches the stall and offers a shy greeting to the beautiful mare. A shadow falls over the scene as the branch chief suddenly strides into the stable with purposeful steps. The fox freezes, looking up in surprise as the imposing figure of the chief towers over the small animal. To the fox's shock, the chief walks right past without a glance, directing his warm greeting solely to the horse named Irax. Completely ignoring the fox, the chief dotes on his horse, tenderly asking if it has eaten and how it is feeling. Inside the quiet stable, a gentle hand strokes the snout of the horse Irax while Milfiria watches curiously from the ground. A soft voice breaks the silence, contrasting sharply with the intimidating reputation of the man speaking. The Ice Branch chief gazes tenderly at the horse, remarking that he finds nothing wrong with people who talk to animals. Milfiria observes his gentle demeanor and realizes that the rumors about the cold Ice Branch chief might be completely wrong. He murmurs sympathetically about the horse having no friends, unaware of the irony in his words as he projects his own loneliness. As he leans his forehead against Irax's nose, Milfiria realizes with a shock that he is actually the one with no friends. He praises the horse as a good boy, confirming the fox's suspicion that this animal is likely his only companion in the world. Overwhelmed by pity, Milfiria cries internally at the sheer sadness of his solitary existence. She concludes that despite his high rank, the branch chief is just a socially clumsy man struggling to connect with others. Analyzing him further, she notes that his handsome face is wasted on a cold image that drives potential human friends away. Determined to fix this tragedy, she decides to offer him some encouragement and scampers toward him with determination. She rubs her small body against his boot, silently pledging her support to the lonely man. Suddenly, the chief stiffens and barks a sharp shout, causing the little fox to freeze in terror. His eye widens with an intensity that sends a fresh wave of fear through her tiny frame. In a flash of movement, he snatches her up from the ground while the horse watches the sudden escalation passively. Terrified by his sudden aggression, Milfiria apologizes internally and braces herself for punishment. He stares at her intensely and asks if horses are okay but foxes are forbidden, his voice dripping with tension. The little fox trembles violently as the atmosphere crackles with what she perceives as his anger. To her confusion, he yells that he knows it is hard, seemingly having a conversation with himself about the difficulty of the situation. Flustered and sweating, he frantically offers to be her friend, insisting that spirits and humans are not enemies. Milfiria tilts her head in confusion as he begs to know if she finds it impossible to be friends with him. His scary facade crumbles completely as he whispers a desperate plea for connection. Unable to hold back, he crushes her in a tight hug, burying his face in her fur while she gasps for air. He nuzzles deeply into her coat, completely losing his composure in the presence of the fluff. A look of wonder crosses his face as he registers the incredible softness of her fur. He squeezes her paws gently, captivated by the tactile sensation of the small creature. A sigh of pure bliss escapes his lips as he melts into the moment. Milfiria hangs limp in his grasp, staring into the void with a deadpan expression as she endures his affection. She categorizes the Ice Branch chief as someone who is undeniably cute but also profoundly weird. Completely smitten, he showers her with confessions of love, ignoring any boundaries of personal space. Turning his attention back to Irax, he gushes over the horse's adorableness while still clutching the fox. He pulls them both into a joyous embrace, declaring with a beaming smile that they are both absolutely adorable. Milfiria stares at him with wide eyes, stunned by the complete transformation of his character. Watching him rub his cheek against the horse, she worries that he might genuinely be unable to open up to fellow humans. She resolves to cheer him up, deciding that even the leader of the group wouldn't mind if she offered some comfort. The chief flushes with emotion, his breath hitching as he gets overwhelmed by the cuteness. Buried in his own arms with the fox perched on his shoulder, he whispers that he is so happy. The scarred knight watches from the doorway, his sharp gaze fixed on the scene unfolding in the snow outside. A look of realization crosses his face as he blinks, processing the interaction he has stumbled upon. The small white fox licks his hand furiously, showing an overwhelming amount of affection and excitement. He regrets coming to visit without any treats, realizing he has nothing to give the eager creature. A narrative box reveals the secret truth that the stoic branch chief Cromwell actually adores animals. Although he knows every member of the fort, he remains distant from newcomers to maintain his image. During winter, he secretly feeds the birds and tends to the horses with surprising gentleness and care. His icy mask completely crumbles whenever a cute snow rabbit or a stray cat wanders into his vicinity. While he thinks he is subtle, everyone around him clearly sees his soft spot for small creatures. Cromwell believes he is hiding his true nature perfectly, completely unaware that his secret is out. The knight realizes Cromwell came specifically to check on Mill and calls out his feigned indifference internally. Holding the fox in his arms, the knight watches as the creature lets out a soft sound toward the chief. A drop of sweat rolls down the knight's face as he endures the awkward tension of the moment. Cromwell stares back with a blank expression, trying to maintain his composure in front of his subordinate. Suddenly, the fox wiggles restlessly, prompting the knight to lower it toward the ground. The creature immediately trots over to Cromwell and affectionately rubs its fluffy body against his legs. Flustered, Cromwell stiffens and demands to know what Adaro and the others want from him. He tries to deflect, claiming he was looking for something else rather than admitting he came for the fox. Staring intensely at the creature, he asks if Mill is the name they have given to it. The knight realizes Cromwell is remembering his old cat Nora while lecturing them about the dangers of naming wild animals. Changing the subject, the knight asks if the chief came to see his horse, Irax, to help him save face. Cromwell seizes the excuse and turns to leave, praising the knight for his thorough care of the horses. As he walks away, the knight teases that he is sure the chief would have enjoyed more time alone. Cromwell stops and apologizes softly for interrupting them, while the fox whines sadly at his departure. The chief walks away through the snow, but the fox stares after his retreating figure with longing. Unable to let him go, the fox darts forward and chases after the dark-haired man. It throws itself at his leg, clinging tightly to him in a desperate attempt to make him stay. Cromwell threatens to kick the creature if it doesn't let go, though his harsh words lack any real intent. He orders it not to follow him, leaving the knight to wonder when the fox became so attached to the chief. The knight calls out the name Mill to snap the creature out of its daze. He stands waiting patiently by the door to see who the fickle fox will choose. The fox leaps back into the knight's arms, causing him to ask with a smirk if it is cheating on him. The one-eyed knight stands amidst the energetic hopping of the small fox, watching its playful antics with a calm expression. His gaze softens into a pensive look, hinting at the deeper thoughts occupying his mind regarding his superior. The fox observes the chief from behind, noting that he wears a mask of ice to avoid disappointing his subordinates. It deduces that the chief is likely deeply concerned about how he is perceived by those around him. Reflecting on his noble origins, the fox realizes he feels insecure about being promoted by influence rather than his own merits. Rumors suggest it was his own desire to leave the comfort of King's Landing and come to this remote northern fort. In this harsh environment where family connections mean nothing, he faces severe weather and knights who were considered troublemakers. Despite the odds, he remains determined to build his reputation on his own terms in this unforgiving place. A soldier admits that many initially disliked him, dismissing him as just a small, wimpy noble kid who wouldn't last the winter. However, opinions shifted drastically once the men actually started working alongside him. One soldier confesses he thought the chief was a prick, but after sparring with him, he realized the man is strong and reliable. Another notes that while the chief is harsh on the unit, he is even harder on himself. The one-eyed knight explains that Cromwell still lacks confidence, even though the entire fort now accepts him as their leader. He reveals that intense human emotion lies beneath the icy mask, often hidden within his strict commands. The chief secretly shows his care for the men and women, offering love behind their backs. The knight assures that being an animal lover hasn't hurt his reputation, as everyone views it in a positive light. He expresses a sincere hope that the chief will come to realize his own standing soon. The fox looks up with pity, mentally labeling the man as their clumsy chief. Meanwhile, the chief blushes intensely, overwhelmed by the creature's fluffiness and unable to maintain his composure. Stealing its resolve, the fox stands firm and decides to take action. It vows to serve as his confidant and companion until he manages to make a real human friend. The next day, the fox visits the stables before noon and finds the chief has finished his work early. Sidling up to him, the fox rubs against his leg to declare its friendship physically. It greets him cheerfully as Mr. Branch Chief, continuing the affectionate nuzzling. The chief stares down at the small creature, his expression unreadable for a moment. Suddenly, his face flushes as he stiffens in surprise at the direct contact. The fox worries it moved too fast, but the chief crouches down to ask if it is okay. He apologizes softly, seeming distressed by his own reaction. Blood trickles from his nose as he admits with a smile that he just wasn't ready for the cuteness. The fox stares in silence, processing the sight of the chief's sudden nosebleed. He insists he won't stop being friends over this, while the fox marvels that even a nosebleed looks beautiful on a handsome face. As weeks pass at the fort, the fox becomes less shy and resolves to get to know the branch chief very well. Milfiria notes that while she has grown close to Tina and the others, she still harbors a specific wariness toward one person. Kix lifts her high with a carefree laugh, while Milfiria resigns herself to the fact that she has become accustomed to his sudden ambushes. Despite the roughhousing, she admits to enjoying her days at the fort, especially the playtime and jerky treats from the one-eyed knight. She details her peaceful routine of stable naps and snow grooming, finding a deep sense of security in the presence of the knight's horse. Muddy from play, she faces the inevitable bath, squeezing her eyes shut and enduring the scrubbing with stoic resignation. She complains internally about the bath's draining heat, disliking the way the hot spring-like water saps all her energy. The day concludes with the one-eyed knight tucking her in, his gentle voice and hands providing the ultimate comfort. His touch acts as a powerful sleeping spell, instantly dropping her into a deep and restful slumber. As peaceful days drift by, Milfiria savors the moment, wishing this tranquility could last forever. Reality sets in as she wonders how much time has passed, realizing with a start that her mother must be waiting for her. Although she cannot speak her thanks, she decides she must leave to prevent the knights from worrying about a sudden disappearance. The thought of her mother's anxiety outweighs her own comfort, hardening her resolve to return to the mountains. She plans her exit strategy, recalling the exact spot where she first breached the fort's perimeter. An imaginary conversation with her mother highlights her fear that if she leaves now, she might never find her way back. Attempting to leave, she is instantly blasted by a fierce wind that pins her small body against the snow. The storm intensifies into a whiteout, trapping her until a familiar voice cuts through the howling wind calling her name. The one-eyed knight throws open the door, and Milfiria feels a surge of salvation as she spots her rescuer. He scoops her up to safety, announcing that he is taking her straight back to his room to warm up. With a serious expression, he warns that the blizzard outside is far too dangerous for anyone to be wandering alone. The storm swallows the world outside, leaving only the sound of wind battering against the safety of the fort. Inside the darkened room, Milfiria stares at windows completely blocked by snow, cutting off all light from the outside. A chilling realization hits her as she recalls from her past life that snow of this intensity only falls in two specific, dangerous locations. She retracts her naive wish to build huts, understanding now that this is not a winter wonderland but a life-threatening event. Confined to the indoors, she retreats to her bed, forced to wait out the tempest in restless silence. The windows rattle violently under the wind's assault, sending a jolt of fear through the little fox. Sleep becomes impossible as the storm's fury keeps her nerves on a razor's edge throughout the night. She curls up tight and prays for the snow to stop, worrying that the relentless accumulation will overwhelm the nights. The wind howls like a living beast, dominating the soundscape and amplifying the tension inside the fort. 3 days of non-stop snow leave the nights looking haggard and deeply concerned about the unprecedented weather. 2 soldiers gaze upward in despair, voicing the terrifying possibility that the snow might bury the fort entirely. Milfiria trembles with a primal fear, feeling powerless and too young to control the elemental force despite her spirit nature. Tina breaks the tension with a shout, announcing that the One-Eyed Knight and the branch leaders have finally returned. The expedition team appears as dark silhouettes against the blinding white, trudging through the deep snow. Overjoyed, Milfiria leaps through the drifts, desperate to reunite with her favorite person. The One-Eyed Knight catches her midair, asking with a warm smile if she stayed out of trouble while he was away. She mentally confirms her good behavior, while Tina rushes forward to welcome the commander back. Grail reports that the nearby town is safe, having suffered only minor damage to a few old shacks. He reassures the worried knights that the civilians are well-stocked and prepared to wait out the heavy snowfall. The Ice Branch chief takes immediate control, ordering fresh troops to mobilize while dismissing the exhausted team. Grail tells Tina to rest, but she notices their gear and realizes they are preparing to head back out immediately. Milfiria watches with sinking dread, silently begging them not to leave her again so soon. The chief warns Grail that they are losing daylight, urging him to move out before the sun disappears completely. He reveals their destination is Mt. Snowlia, the sacred domain where the spirits are said to dwell. Milfiria freezes as the name hits her, the significance of the location causing her heart to skip a beat. A shock of recognition flashes through her as she realizes they are marching directly toward her home. The town elders cause a commotion, claiming the angry spirits have cursed the land with a blizzard that will never end. Desperate to save their home, the old folks try to march to the altar in Snowlia to beg for forgiveness. The knights intervened to stop the elders, promising to undertake the dangerous journey to the altar in their place. A female knight doubts the spiritual cause but urges the group to leave immediately before the path becomes impassable. She admits she is skeptical of the lore but concedes that ignoring the locals' warnings would be foolish. Cromwell grimly notes the unnatural weather and warns that the damage will be catastrophic if the snow continues. The expedition team trudges through the deep drifts, battling the elements as they set out on their mission. Refusing to sit idly by, Cromwell declares his intent to do whatever he can while they still have the strength to act. The commander offers his men a chance to stay behind, warning that the short journey to the altar is fraught with danger. The squad refuses to abandon their leaders, shouting that if the chief and commander go, they are all going together. A soft whimper stops the commander in his tracks, and he turns to find the small fox looking up at him. Mill clings stubbornly to his leg, silently begging him not to leave her behind. He kneels in the snow and gently tells the creature that she must stay here this time. Seeing her distress, he asks if she dislikes being apart from him, his voice filled with regret. Cromwell interrupts to state the harsh truth that the fox will only slow them down, earning a glare from the creature. The commander sighs, admitting he knows the risks, while the fox clings desperately to his hand. Making the necessary sacrifice, he hands the reluctant fox over to Tina to hold back. He waves a cheerful goodbye, promising the watching creature that he will be back soon. Walking away into the snow, he calls back a final promise that they will play again when he returns. The team pushes forward into the storm, their figures quickly swallowed by the whiteout. The cold becomes physically painful, stinging their skin as the temperature drops drastically. As they climb higher, the visibility vanishes completely, wrapping them in a blinding cocoon of white. Cromwell shouts commands over the roaring wind, urging the struggling group to keep moving. Doubts creep in among the soldiers, who wonder if blind offerings can truly appease spirits of unknown anger. The commander insists they must try, reasoning that doing nothing means the blizzard could last forever. Internally, he suppresses the fear that they might get lost, even though he has traveled this path many times. A violent gust nearly knocks them over, forcing Cromwell to ask if they should retreat while the horses still have strength. He argues that proceeding is too dangerous, but the commander pushes onward through the gale. Suddenly, the deafening roar of the wind shifts, the aggressive howl fading into a strange sound. The heavy curtain of snow lifts abruptly, the whiteout dispersing as if by magic. Cromwell and the commander look around in shock as the violent weather vanishes into silence. The soldiers celebrate the sudden calm, but the commander sharply warns them not to let their guard down. Kix points excitedly into the distance, alerting the squad that they have spotted their target. The team arrives at the site, staring up at the towering, ice-encased altar structures rising from the snow. The one-eyed knight confirms they have reached the altar, smiling broadly at the success of their trek. The group marches forward through the deep snow, approaching the mysterious formation with caution. Chief Cromwell questions if the fierce snowstorm was truly summoned by the spirits as they suspected. The one-eyed knight shouts a warning to Kix, ordering him not to approach the dangerous site alone. Tension spikes as the soldiers spot the ethereal form of the spirit manifesting ahead. Doubts linger in the air as they wonder if the legendary entity will actually show herself to them. Grail admits he has never seen a snow spirit, prompting a quiet question from the chief. He explains that while spirits assist royalty, he has never witnessed one in person despite the well-known stories. To Grail's surprise, the chief reveals that he has seen her and confirms the rumors of her stunning beauty. Cromwell explains his past as the prince's bodyguard gave him the opportunity, leaving Kix eager to know if she is pretty. A powerful aura sweeps across the snow, signaling the arrival of an immense and overwhelming beauty. The knights brace themselves against the pressure as the wind whips around them in anticipation. Snowlia, the spirit of snow, emerges from the blizzard in a swirl of elegant robes and power. Her piercing eyes scan the intruders, cold and imposing as the winter itself. The knights stand frozen in awe as the spirit fully reveals her majestic form to the group. Grail stares at her silver hair and white skin, instantly recognizing the striking resemblance to Little Mill. Her beauty is undeniable, striking fear and admiration into the hearts of the men as they gaze upon her. Panic sets in as Grail orders the men to look at her necklace instead of her face to maintain their composure. He realizes that remembering Mill helps him stay grounded in the presence of such overwhelming power. Chief Cromwell steps forward without fear, addressing the entity directly as the snow spirit Snowlia. The spirit speaks softly, her voice carrying a heavy burden as she mentions her child. Rage explodes as she demands to know where the humans have taken her missing daughter, Milfiria. She accuses the knights of theft, asking what they want in exchange for her child. Cromwell raises a hand to halt her accusation, calling for a moment to explain the situation. He clarifies that they are simply knights of the fort here to stop the blizzard, not kidnappers. Snowlia pauses, processing the information that these men belong to the local garrison. Realizing her mistake, she accepts that they were ignorant of her child's existence. She explains that spirit children are weak and sought after, making her wary of all humans who approach. Cromwell questions how kidnappers would even know about the child or reach this remote location in winter. Snowlia reveals she triggered an avalanche to bury the intruders before they could get too close to her. Two soldiers struggle through the snow, worrying that the small creature would never survive the descent on its own. The spirit mother laments that her child is just a baby and would never have left home voluntarily, unaware the fox is safe. She weeps uncontrollably, imagining Milfiria as a timid girl who must be terrified and alone in the wilderness. Grail demands she stop the blizzard for the search, but she refuses while he vows to do everything to return her child. The spirit mother confesses she cannot control her power, admitting the blizzard is a direct result of her overwhelming distress. Rage consumes her as she thinks of the kidnappers, causing her magic to flare violently out of control. Grail watches in horror as the situation escalates, realizing the spirit's emotional state is making the storm deadly. He shouts to his men, realizing that this freezing hellscape will not end until the spirit's child is returned. The soldiers panic as the temperature drops further, realizing they are in mortal danger if they don't act fast. Grail decides they must retreat to the fort, but first he turns back to the spirit to get crucial information. He shouts over the wind, demanding the spirit tell him exactly what her child looks like so they can find it. Desperate for clues, he asks if it is a boy or a girl, insisting they need a visual description to help. The spirit mother suddenly pauses, her senses picking up the lingering scent of her child on the night. Grail freezes in shock as the spirit's demeanor shifts instantly from sorrow to dangerous suspicion. She lunges at him with terrifying speed, accusing him of being the one who took her baby. Her face twists into a mask of fury as she screams demands to know where he has hidden her child. Tension explodes as a hand grips a weapon, the blizzard raging on while the fort lies buried in the distance. Back at the fort, Milfiria lets out a high-pitched cry, trying desperately to make herself heard. She stares hopelessly at the frosted window, realizing her small voice is completely drowned out by the howling wind. Guilt consumes her as she assumes her mother is angry because she broke the rules and left home. Milfiria realizes she is the cause of this disaster and frets over the safety of the one-eyed knight and the chief. Tina smiles reassuringly, confident that the capable commander and chief will make smart decisions and return safely. Dread fills the little fox as she imagines the catastrophic meeting between her mother and the knight. Unable to sit still, she resolves that she must get to the one-eyed knight immediately to stop the conflict. Tina gently stops her, asking if her desperation comes from her love for the commander. When Milfiria confirms her feelings, Tina suggests they wait by the door together if she is so worried. Holding the fox close, Tina prepares to head to the entrance while warning her about the severity of the weather. The storm intensifies rapidly, transforming the world outside into a blinding white wall of death. Milfiria stares into the abyss, realizing that staying out in this freezing tempest would mean certain death. She questions if waiting is the right choice, torn between her safety and the burning need to help. Memories of her humanity clash with her spirit nature as she decides she must use her new life to protect everyone. With renewed determination, she declares her intent to brave the storm and go to the one-eyed knight. Recalling all the help she has received, the small fox decides it is finally her turn to save the day. Tina gasps in surprise as the creature in her arms suddenly begins to glow and tremble with energy. A miniature blizzard erupts from the fox's body, swirling around Tina and blinding her with snow. Seizing the moment, the creature leaps from her arms and dives straight toward the ground. The soldiers shout in alarm as the small fox buries itself into the deep snow and disappears. Mil tears through the snowdrifts with supernatural speed, determined to reach her goal. Her physical form seems to dissolve into light, leaving Tina grasping at empty air. Drifting in a white void, Mil terrifies herself with the thought that she has turned into snow and died. Sparkling snowflakes dance around her vision until she spots a shadow in the distance. She extends a paw and feels the reassuring texture of something solid beneath her touch. Realizing she is standing on her favorite soft snow, she cheers internally at being alive. She spots the one-eyed knight standing tall in the snow, looking weary but unbroken. Her heart soars and she cries out to him, relieved to see her guardian safe. The knight breathes a sigh of relief, thanking the gods that his companion is unharmed. Mil freezes in shock as she recognizes the woman sitting in the snow as Firia. The knight stands protectively over the exhausted spirit woman while the storm settles around them. Dumbfounded, Mil stares blankly at the pair, unable to comprehend what she is seeing.
The story begins with the frozen white expanse of the mountains, where the wind carries the chill of a recent blizzard. A woman with pale hair and elegant features stands amidst the snow, her eyes wide with bewilderment as she stares forward. Before her stands the imposing figure of the one-eyed knight, his scarred face marked by a single tear and an expression of stunned relief. The soldiers accompanying him gasp in unison, their breath visible in the frigid air as they recognize the woman, stammering out a confused identification of mother. The tension in the air is palpable as the group processes the sudden, miraculous convergence of their paths. The knights question if the two parties were destined to face each other in this desolate landscape. The woman's attention snaps toward the small, white creature in the scene, crying out the name Milfiria. Her mind races as she attempts to rationalize the impossible situation, her thoughts drifting to the one-eyed knight standing before her. She speculates on the mechanics of this reunion, wondering if she had disappeared and moved instantaneously, similar to a time when her own mother traveled to King's Landing. Despite the confusion surrounding the logistics of their meeting, a wave of relief washes over her as she observes that everyone is unharmed. The overwhelming gratitude that they are safe eclipses her confusion. Overcome with emotion, the woman drops to her knees and embraces the small, fox-like spirit creature, burying her face in its soft, white fur. She confesses the depth of her anxiety, her voice trembling as she reveals she had no idea the creature was safe. Milfiria, currently in her beast form, realizes she must apologize for the distress she caused. The woman presses her cheek against the creature's head, tears streaming from her eyes as she whispers how glad she is. In a firm yet tender tone, she extracts a promise from Milfiria, stating that she must never leave the house without permission again, begging the creature not to cry. Milfiria, nestled in the woman's arms, attempts to communicate her remorse, wishing to convey her sorrow for the worry she incited. The soldiers watching this intimate exchange remain baffled, whispering amongst themselves as they try to decipher the situation. One knight questions what is happening, while another identifies the small creature not just as a pet, but as the spirit's child. The woman, composing herself slightly, acknowledges that Milfiria managed to return to her. She deduces that the creature utilized her innate power to traverse the distance. However, the atmosphere shifts abruptly from relief to hostility. The woman lifts her gaze, her eyes narrowing as she focuses on the tall warrior standing before her. A dark assumption takes root in her mind. With a voice rising in accusation, she declares that she knows exactly what happened. It was the one-eyed knight who kidnapped her child. The knight recoils, pointing at himself in sheer disbelief at the sudden allegation. He repeats the title One-Eyed Knight, with incredulity, trying to process the sudden shift from a tearful reunion to a confrontation. He attempts to interject, shouting for her to wait a minute, but she silences him immediately, commanding him to shut up. The knight, flustered, tries to reason that he thought she was angry with the child for leaving without permission, not at him for kidnapping. But the woman is beyond reasoning. Her magical aura begins to flare, distorting the air around her as she fixates on the idea that he took her child. The confusion among the knights deepens as they watch the misunderstanding spiral out of control. The woman's eyes glow with dangerous power, and she screams that she will not listen to any excuses. Milfiria, sensing the imminent danger, panics. She realizes her mother is mistaken and frantically tries to intervene. The creature makes guttural sounds, struggling to form human speech to prevent a catastrophe. Internally, Milfiria screams her affection for the man, identifying him as the one-eyed knight whom she loves so much. She acknowledges him as her favorite. The woman's rage intensifies, threatening not just the knight but the rest of the soldiers stationed in the fortress. Milfiria struggles against the overwhelming pressure, screaming internally that the knight did nothing wrong. She despairs that her mother cannot hear her internal thoughts. The woman's power manifests physically, a terrifying force capable of freezing everyone in an instant. Milfiria realizes her mother is absolutely serious about unleashing this devastation. Desperate to save the man she loves, the small creature pushes past her limits. A loud, clear voice erupts from the small animal, shattering the tension. Stop. The command echoes through the snowy clearing, followed by a definitive no. Silence descends upon the group. The woman freezes, her anger suspended by shock. She looks down at the creature in her arms, asking tentatively if that voice belonged to her. The knight, equally stunned, stammers the name, Milfiria? Milfiria looks around, blinking in confusion as she questions if she was the one who spoke. To the observers, it sounded exactly like a human child speaking. Realization dawns on Milfiria as she confirms that the voice did indeed come from her. She tests her new ability, haltingly stating, "I speak. My words." She worries about her proficiency, hoping they can understand her. She acknowledges internally that this is her first time speaking the language of this world, which results in her speech being a bit sloppy. The woman, eyes glistening with a new kind of emotion, encourages the creature to continue. She prompts Milfiria to say the word, mother, certain that it should be her first designation. Milfiria stammers, trying to form the word, but instead pivots to the urgent matter at hand. She commands them to listen. After a brief affirmative from the woman, Milfiria finally says, mother, before launching into her explanation. Milfiria clarifies that she went out by herself and that the knights did not take her. She asserts firmly that her mother is wrong. She explains that she left because she was lonely and there was no one at the house. She didn't want to go back to that solitude. As she speaks, she glances at the knight, realizing she doesn't know how to articulate his title, One-Eyed Knight, properly in this spoken language. Continuing her defense of the soldiers, Milfiria explains that she descended the mountain on her own. She takes full responsibility, calling herself bad. She gestures to the soldiers, stating that they saved her life and that they are good people. She insists that if her mother needs to be angry at anyone, she can be mad at Milfiria all she wants. She concludes her plea by shifting the blame entirely onto herself to protect her rescuers. The woman's expression softens completely. She rubs her cheek against Milfiria's fur, commenting on how nice it is that Milfiria can now speak and move with such agency. She admits she didn't know the creature possessed the strength to accomplish such a feat. The mother declares she is very happy. She reflects on her misconception, admitting she thought Milfiria was just a baby, yet the creature managed to climb down the mountain all alone on those little legs. Milfiria, embarrassed by the affection in front of an audience, reminds her mother that everyone is watching. The woman sighs, expressing a wish for Milfiria to remain her little girl for a while longer. She advises Milfiria to take her time growing up. The mother confesses a complex mix of emotions: happiness for Milfiria's growth, tainted by the sadness of her child becoming independent. She clarifies that she was never actually angry with Milfiria in the first place. Milfiria seeks confirmation that her mother won't get mad. She apologizes again and asks for forgiveness, not just for herself, but for the people of the fort. The woman, humbled, admits she was wrong. She turns to the knights and apologizes for what she did to them. She hopes this clears up the misunderstanding. Bowing her head, she asks for forgiveness for trying to hurt them, explaining that she loses her calm when it comes to the safety of her child. The one-eyed knight stands awkwardly, rubbing the back of his neck. He starts to speak but hesitates, stammering over the words. He confesses that he wants to say something to the child but doesn't know how to address the one-eyed descriptor she used. He falls silent, unsure of how to navigate the clumsy nickname. The woman continues her amends, apologizing again. She asks the knight to convey her apologies to the townspeople for the trouble she caused them. She promises to control the weather, ensuring it won't snow again until the blizzard's remnants have melted. She offers a pact of assistance, stating that if he ever needs help, he can always come to this altar. She reiterates her sorrow for the chaos. Turning back to Milfiria, the woman asks, "How is this?" seeking approval for her diplomatic resolution. She thanks the knight for protecting her child. Milfiria observes the knights, noting with relief that they don't seem mad. She feels the weight of guilt, knowing she was the one who started the entire ordeal, and wonders if they will truly forgive her. The woman turns to leave, advising the knights that they too should return to the fort before the sun sets. Milfiria declares she will return home with her mother. Suddenly, the one-eyed knight calls out, asking them to wait. Milfiria realizes she has left something unfinished. She hasn't apologized to the knights directly, nor has she thanked them for their help. She feels a pang of sadness, realizing she isn't ready to say goodbye just yet. Mustering her voice one last time, Milfiria shouts across the snow. She apologizes for all the trouble and screams, "I'm sorry." As the distance grows, she continues to yell, declaring that the experience was fun. She thanks them for their help. In a moment of pure, uninhibited affection, she screams, "I love you." Everyone at the fort, promising to see them again. The soldiers turn and begin their trek back, their cloaks billowing in the snowy wind as they march away from the altar. They walk in silence, leaving the magical pair behind. At the rear of the column, the one-eyed knight pauses. He turns his head, looking back toward the mountain one last time. A gentle expression softens his scarred features as he whispers the name Mil into the quiet air. An unnatural silence blankets the silvery white landscape, the air colder here than anywhere else in the world, stripping away all sound until only a profound ringing quiet remains. Inside the shelter of the spirit dwelling, Milfiria lies curled on the ground, her small white form huddled against the isolation. She wrestles with a gnawing unease, unable to find comfort in the peace and quiet that once defined her existence. She reassures herself that this place is safe, devoid of enemies, yet her mind drifts uncontrollably back to the bustling sounds of the human fortress she left behind. She recalls the constant noise of others, a sharp contrast to her current solitude, and her thoughts spiral into a roll call of the people she misses: the stern but kind branch chief, the formidable one-eyed knight, and her friends Tina, Kix, and the big brother figure. Snow Leah, the spirit mother, approaches her despondent child, noticing the gloom hanging over her. She attempts to soothe Milfiria's anxiety, reminding her that her mother is right here beside her and that she has no intention of leaving for a while. Milfiria, however, looks up with wide, pleading eyes and tentatively asks if she might be allowed to play at the fort. She confesses the depth of her longing, admitting that she misses everyone there and desperately wants to see them again. Snow Leah absorbs this request, her expression shifting into a mask of contemplative seriousness as she gazes out from their sanctuary toward the distant human stronghold. Meanwhile, within the stone walls of the fortress, the mood is equally somber. The one-eyed knight leans against a window frame, staring out at the snow, his face etched with a quiet melancholia. He finds himself dwelling on the tactile memory of the snow spirit, the unique, illuminating coldness of Milfiria's body temperature that marked her as a being of ice and magic. He recalls how satisfying it felt to touch her fur, a sensation he realizes he is now profoundly deprived of. Though he rationally acknowledges the strategic advantage of having the spirit of snow on their side, and admits he is glad for the alliance, his personal feelings betray him. He sighs, lamenting that he missed the chance to do Snowlia a favor, which might have secured him more access to the spirit child. The knight's internal monologue deepens into despair as he realizes the only source of healing left to them now is the hot springs, as the therapeutic comfort of stroking Milferia's fur is gone. He engages in a pessimistic conversation with a subordinate, rationalizing that since Milferia is with her mother, she likely won't return. He explains that spirits operate on a different temporal scale, possessing vast lifespans that make human time seem fleeting. He grimly speculates that it could be 10 years before she decides to visit again, by which time she will have likely forgotten all about them. The atmosphere in the fort continues to deteriorate. The knight learns that Cromwell has locked himself in his room since Milferia's departure, refusing to come out or even look around, leaving the knight to hope the man isn't crying in solitude. Recognizing the collective depression sinking the morale of his troops, the knight decides he must act as a pillar of strength. He resolves to get his own feelings in order so he can cheer up the others, refusing to blame them for their sadness. He forces himself outside into the biting cold, running hard through the snow to physically exhaust his emotional turmoil. Inside the mess hall, soldiers eat in silence, their faces long and weary, creating a tableau of collective misery. Elsewhere in the fort, the branch chief, Sulia, immerses herself in administrative duties to cope. She drafts a critical letter to the commander of the Knights in King's Landing, documenting every detail of the recent event. She worries about the letter entrusted to Cromwell for the king, doubting his progress given his current emotional state, and decides she must go check on him. She notes a conflict in her report. While Snowlia wished to keep her presence private, the branch chief is duty-bound to report the existence of the spirit of Snow's child. Outside, the one-eyed knight's training is interrupted by a soft, familiar sound, Kyun. He freezes, his breath catching in his throat as he looks down. There, lying in the snow as if she had always been there, is Milferia. The little spirit apologizes for being in the way, fearing she might be stepped on, but the knight is too stunned to care. He quickly assures her she is fine, his composure cracking as tears well up in his remaining eye. A chuckle of pure disbelief escapes him as he remembers that Milferia can speak now. He asks if it is a bad time for her to be here, to which she simply replies, "No, it's not." The knight, wiping tears from his face, asks how she arrived so suddenly. Milferia innocently explains she used teleportation, the same method she employed yesterday to descend the mountain in mere moments. The knight praises this amazing ability, admitting he is a little surprised to see her again so soon. His concern immediately shifts to protocol, asking if Snowlia allowed this visit. Milferia confirms she told her mother and received permission to visit for a little bit every day. Emboldened by the reunion, Milferia addresses him directly as One-Eyed Knight. The knight accepts the title easily, but Milferia elaborates, revealing she specifically asked her mother to teach her those words so she could call him by name. Realizing that One-Eyed Knight is effectively his name in her eyes, he suggests they go tell the others of her arrival to fix the gloomy atmosphere plaguing the fort. He lifts her into his arms, telling her she will understand the situation once they get inside. As he holds her, the knight reflects on the nature of their bond. He muses that if she were a wild fox, he would have eventually returned her to the wild to prevent her from becoming dependent on humans. However, knowing she is a spirit entity, that rule no longer applies. He laughs softly, burying his face in her thick fur with a sound of pasu pasu, indulging in the tactile comfort he thought was lost forever. The knight walks into the fortress, greeting the branch chief who thanks him for his hard work. The chief freezes, her eyes widening in shock as she spots the white ball of fluff on the knight's shoulder. The effect is instantaneous. The soldiers' faces light up, smiles replacing the gloom as laughter ripples through the room. The knight beams, happy to see his troops energized again, and tells Milferia that he is glad to see her here in the fort. He mentally resolves to thank Snowlia for her forgiveness once more. Milferia, observing the joyous reaction, wonders innocently if they really thought she wouldn't come back after yesterday. The branch chief, overwhelmed by the sudden reversal of fortune, bursts into tears, sobbing that she isn't crying while clearly losing control of her emotions. She tries to compose herself to discuss the report regarding the blizzard and the snow spirit. The knight informs her that Snowlia has not told anyone about them yet, suggesting a need for discretion in their report to His Majesty the King. The chief acknowledges this, understanding that the royal capital is still unaware of the full situation. Unable to maintain her professional facade any longer, she embraces Milferia, burying her face in the spirit's fur and pleading to just be allowed to do this for a while. Later, Milfiria returns to the ice cave, calling out, "Mother," and "I'm home." Snowlia welcomes her back but listens intently as Milfiria relays the situation about the branch chief and the human's intention to report the events. Snowlia expresses annoyance, noting it would be troublesome to have the human government prying into their affairs. She makes a swift, decisive calculation. If the humans are going to report it, she will preempt them. She announces that she is going to King's Landing immediately and taking Milfiria with her. Milfiria is stunned, repeating the destination in disbelief. She is going to meet the king. Snowlia, fueled by maternal protectiveness and the news that the knights were petting her child, commands Milfiria to come along. Milfiria panics, screaming that she needs to be groomed before such a meeting, but her mother ushers her out regardless. Snowlia's internal monologue reveals the depth of her ferocity. She vows that if anything happens to her child, she will lose all control, regardless of the consequences. She intends to make the humans listen to her very carefully. The scene shifts to the royal palace, where Snowlia sits before the king and queen. Despite her earlier nervousness, she speaks with a commanding, terrifying tone that dominates the room. Milfiria trembles, terrified by her mother's aggression toward the monarch, but the king and queen seem entirely unbothered. In fact, the royals are blushing, captivated by Milfiria's appearance, whispering about how cute she is and wondering if she is comfortable to pet. The king, smiling broadly, observes the pair. He remarks that they seem to have been born in a very good time, noting the rarity of seeing a spirit at such an early age. He then drops a startling observation, referring to two of them and mentioning a child of snow and fire. Milfiria looks down in confusion, repeating, "Child of fire?" as she notices a small creature with a flaming tail sitting quietly beside her, revealing that she is not the only spirit child in the room. Snowlia reveals the existence of other spirits as she explains that a powerful fire spirit resides to the south of the country who has children of his own. Milfiria reacts with curious astonishment to the concept of a child born of fire while Snowlia questions if the young spirit had heard this news before. Milfiria admits she has never heard of this fire spirit, though she ponders whether the child would be roughly her own age, specifically noting that he would be about 6 months older than her. The conversation is cut short by a sudden sense of impending arrival as characters warn that rumors are becoming reality. The atmosphere shifts violently as the fire spirit himself manifests, standing with a confident, half-naked physique adorned with flame-like tattoos and a heavy stone necklace. The onlookers recoil in shock at the sight of the legendary entity. He greets Snowlia with a boisterous tone, remarking on how long it has been since they last met, while she identifies him as Hilg. Snowlia immediately demands that he stay away, her voice trembling with the physical strain of his presence. She explains that her kind is weak against his nature and feels as though she might literally melt if he remains in close proximity. Hilg laughs off her concerns, suggesting she should not avoid him so intensely, even as Snowlia insists she has been telling him to keep his distance for a long time. Despite her discomfort, Snowlia admits that while she cannot get used to his intense heat, she does not truly hate him. The fire spirit continues to chuckle, his presence creating a heat wave that feels as stifling as a bathhouse or a fort fireplace. The tension rises when Hilg notices Milfiria and exclaims in surprise at the sight of Snowlia's child, questioning why she never told him she had one. He estimates the little white fox girl must be at least 1 year old based on her appearance. Snowlia fiercely guards her daughter, shouting for him to stay away while reminding him that she never told him about Milfiria because she previously refused his advances to have a child with him. Hilg turns his attention to the little panther cub accompanying him, whom he identifies as a child of water, though the statement causes immediate confusion. The children watch the exchange between the two powerful spirits, with Milfiria finding Hilg's voice lovely even as she struggles with the oppressive heat. Milfiria begins to contemplate her own origins, realizing that if it takes 2 spirits to make a child, she must have a father as well. Meanwhile, Hilg compliments Milfiria on her beauty, causing her heart to skip a beat in a moment of innocent flusteredness. The focus shifts to Hilg's son, Kugel, a black panther cub with flame-red eyes and a leopard-patterned coat. Milfiria observes the cub with intense curiosity, noting the patterns on his fur and his dark paws. Kugel remains on high alert, growling softly as he approaches the little fox. Hilg gently chides his son, telling Kugel it is rude to be mean to his little sister, which confirms to Milfiria that the cub is indeed a boy. Kugel stubbornly insists he is not weak and that threats are only for the feeble, though he admits he would have preferred a sister. As the 2 young spirits interact, Milfiria finds herself amazed by Kugel's tail, which stays alight with fire even when he shakes it. She tells the cub she doesn't think he is weak or strong, just cute, and expresses a desire to see his black paws. Kugel remains defensive, shouting that he is not afraid of her. The parents eventually intervene, with Snowlia scolding Kugel for his behavior and Hilg picking up the cub while remarking on how much the boy resembles him. Snowlia continues to demand that Hilg keep his child away from her lovely Milfiria. Milfiria reflects on the narrow escape from having a violent fiancé at only 1 year old, glad that her mother disagreed with the union. She continues to dwell on the revelation that her father was likely a water spirit, a thought she had never considered before meeting the spirits from the south. To lighten the mood later at the fort, a girl named Tina presents Milfiria with a handmade stuffed rabbit. Milfiria is delighted by the gift, enjoying the sensation of biting into the soft cotton. She admits she has never played with a stuffed animal before and finds it the perfect size for her. As the visit concludes, Milfiria gets more accustomed to traveling between the fort and her home. She encounters Kugel once more in the snow and asks if he truly came from the south. Kugel insists he does not mind the cold, even as they stand on the snowy mountain, maintaining his tough persona despite his young age. Would you like me to analyze the specific visual differences between the fire and ice spirit designs? Mil's toy rabbit lies mangled on the floor, its white stuffing spilling from its torn seams while its button eyes stare blankly upward. Tina stands over the wreckage with a look of deep regret, confessing that his play became too rough and resulted in the toy's destruction. He feels a wave of guilt wash over him, believing he has truly ruined things. However, the young girl offers a warm, forgiving smile, assuring him that she had a wonderful time playing regardless of the broken toy. She promises to craft an even sturdier replacement for him next time. Mil observes this exchange, noting how well things turned out for Tina's companion. The conversation soon shifts toward more mystical matters as Tina asks about the whereabouts of the water spirit. Mil confirms that he has heard reports of the spirit residing in the southern lands, though he lacks an exact location. He suspects the spirit is relatively close by, but suggests that further information might be required. Tina processes this information, realizing that the most direct way to find the truth is to seek answers from his mother. Beneath a vast, starlit sky, the small fox-like creature nestles against the massive, soft white fur of his mother. He begins to question his own heritage, noting that while he has a mother, his father is absent from his life. His mother explains the unique nature of their kind, revealing that spirits do not follow the traditional family structures of humans. She clarifies that while she is a snow spirit, his father is a water spirit, making Tina a unique bridge between the two elements. She explains that the child of a spirit can inherit the nature of one parent or the other, and since he was born a girl, in the spirit's eyes, she was chosen to raise him. Tina realizes that had he been born a boy, he might never have known his mother's care. Curiosity burns within the young spirit as he asks what his father is actually like. His mother describes the water spirit as a slow, easygoing individual who serves as a natural counterpart to the snow. Tina finds this description a bit plain for a legendary figure, yet his desire to meet him only grows. Seeing her child's intense curiosity, the mother spirit agrees to allow a meeting, promising to discuss it further when morning comes. Tina clings to this promise, swearing he will not forget her words as he drifts off to sleep in the safety of her tail. The next morning, the mother spirit prepares to make her daily rounds, granting Tina permission to visit the nearby fort as long as he returns before the sun sets. Tina eagerly accepts, but he has a more ambitious plan in mind. He reflects on his burgeoning teleportation abilities. Unlike his mother, who can travel to any place she imagines, he can only teleport by focusing on a specific person. He decides to use the one-eyed knight at the fort as his anchor, but his thoughts begin to wander toward the father he has never met. He tries to concentrate on the knight, but the word, father, repeats in his mind like a mantra. The teleportation spell activates with a flash of light, but when Tina opens his eyes, he is not at the fort. Instead of the familiar cold and stone, he finds himself standing in a lush, green landscape under a bright sky. He gazes upon a massive, shimmering lake, far larger than any body of water he has seen on his home mountain. Looming before him is what appears to be a gargantuan white wall, but as he looks closer, he notices a distinct, scaled pattern. He recoils in shock as the wall moves, revealing itself to be the body of an enormous white snake. The serpent is colossal, its presence filling Tina with a mixture of awe and pure terror. He trembles as the creature begins to stir, wondering if he has enough time to escape before he is swallowed whole. To his absolute surprise, the giant snake speaks, its voice low and heavy with sleep. The creature looks at the tiny intruder and utters the name of Tina's mother, Snow Leah, questioning if she has somehow shrunk. Tina quickly corrects the misunderstanding, explaining that Snow Leah is his mother. The serpent processes this slowly, eventually realizing that the small creature is the child Snow Leah had been carrying. Tina finds the snake's voice incredibly soothing and slow, struggling to stay awake as he addresses the behemoth. Summoning his courage, he asks the question that brought him there, "Are you my father?" The snake hesitates, noting that Tina does not seem to have inherited any of the properties of water, which makes the connection feel wrong to him at first. This cold assessment hurts Tina's feelings, making him feel unwanted. He had imagined a warm reunion, perhaps similar to the energetic fire spirit, but the reality is much more subdued. Seeing the child's distress, the water spirit relents, acknowledging that if Tina was born from the love between him and Snow Leah, then he must indeed be his child. He admits that Tina's lack of hair, or rather his fox-like fur, was a point of confusion, but he accepts the truth. Tina feels a sense of relief, glad that he pushed for the truth even if it felt awkward. The massive serpent then encourages Tina to explore the area since he has traveled so far, before seemingly preparing to drift back into a slumber. Tina wanders toward the edge of the Great Lake, fascinated by the absence of ice and the abundance of fish darting beneath the surface. However, he quickly discovers that his father's laid-back nature has a very sharp limit. Every time Tina wanders more than 8 meters away, the great snake's voice booms out, commanding him to stay still or come back. The water spirit insists that a child should never be out of their parents' sight until they are much older. Tina feels a sudden weight of restriction, realizing he has traded his mother's freedom for his father's stifling overprotection. As the serpent shifts into a human form, a tall man with long, flowing hair and a gentle smile, Tina looks up, realizing his quest for a father has come with unexpected strings attached. The small, fox-like creature awakens with a start, realization dawning as it scans its surroundings and finds its father absent from the immediate vicinity. The creature recalls falling into a deep slumber due to the sheer comfort of its previous environment, but its eyes widen in shock upon discovering a long-haired human male sleeping soundly nearby. As the man stirs and notes that the little one is already awake, the creature, identified as Mill, acknowledges the time while feeling the internal pressure of needing to return home. The man calmly suggests a return visit the following day, a proposal that leaves the creature momentarily stunned and hesitant as it contemplates how to explain its whereabouts to its mother. Despite the worry about the scent of a human giving away its secret, Mill eventually agrees to return, prompted by the man's insistent yet gentle command. Suddenly, a woman with fox-like ears and ornate, wintry clothing materializes through a flurry of snowflakes, expressing her concern about Mill being late while manifesting surprise at the man's presence. Mill immediately begins to stammer apologies and explanations, claiming to have been asleep and ending up there without intending to cause trouble for the man, whom the creature calls father. The man, addressing the woman as Snow Leah, greets her after what seems to have been a significant passage of time, remarking on how she remains as beautiful as ever. Snow Leah appears flustered by the suddenness of his compliment, hiding her face behind her sleeve while Mill watches the interaction with wide, curious eyes. Seizing the moment of softened tension, Mill asks for permission to visit its father again the next day. Snow Leah grants the request, noting that Mill will be safe in his company, leading to a joyful celebration between the creature and the man. Later, reflecting on the dynamics of the pair, Mill observes that while their relationship seems different from human couples, there are undeniable similarities in their bond. The scene shifts as the snow from a recent blizzard begins to melt, leaving the ground muddy and unsuitable for outdoor play. Mill worries that getting dirty will result in another trip to the bathhouse and wanders indoors, contemplating the doll that was recently broken and wondering how to spend the day without disturbing the nights. A sudden noise startles the creature, and a man known as the branch chief appears, apologizing for his abrupt arrival. He reveals that he heard about the broken doll and, sensing Mill's sadness, presents a new gift to replace it. The branch chief produces an exquisitely crafted doll, explaining that he commissioned it from a master craftsman and even selected the specific fabrics for its clothing. Mill is overwhelmed by the gesture, moved by the fact that the branch chief, whom others claim has no friends, went to such lengths to ensure the creature's happiness. Although the doll is beautiful and expensive, Mill finds it almost too precious to play with, fearing it might get scratched or dirty. Internally, the creature realizes that while this doll is magnificent, It does not quite match the specific one it had been searching for. Noticing Mill's hesitation, the branch chief offers to keep the doll for himself if it isn't to the creature's liking, but Mill quickly insists that it likes the gift. The branch chief then reveals a good idea and encourages Mill to show off its cuteness to others, though he requests that his involvement in providing the outfit remain a secret. Mill is soon seen wearing a frilly, lace-heavy dress that is described as gorgeous and cute, though the creature finds the garment incredibly snug and difficult to move in. The branch chief, clutching his head in frustration, laments his failure to have his camera equipment ready to document the sight. As Mill moves through the halls, the knights and other residents are captivated by the adorable sight, offering a barrage of compliments. A scarred knight notices that Mill seems slightly unwell, but the creature insists it is fine, merely happy to receive the praise even if naked is the best, and clothes are ultimately a hindrance to its freedom. Tina sits comfortably in an ornate chair, her face lit with a gentle smile as she carefully runs a brush through Mill's thick, white fur. The small creature rests contentedly in her lap, eyes closed in bliss while soaking in the warmth and the pleasant scent of her caretaker. Tina leans in close, her ponytail swaying as she admires the softness of the creature and suggests that Mill should roll over onto her back. Mill, ever trusting of the woman, chirps a soft agreement and begins to shift her weight. Tina's eyes widen with a mixture of excitement and hesitation as she stares at the exposed, fluffy underbelly of her companion. She has long dreamed of burying her face in that pristine white fur, and the opportunity finally sits directly before her. Unable to contain her impulse any longer, she dives forward, burying her face into Mill's stomach with a muffled cry of joy. The suddenness of the contact causes Mill to squirm and wiggle in surprise, her paws treading the air as she processes the unexpected affection. Sensing the creature's immediate tension, Tina recoils with a sheepish, flustered expression, her hands raised in a frantic apology. She worries that she has overstepped a boundary and made her friend uncomfortable. Mill stands on the floor, her fur slightly ruffled and a visible blush creeping across her face as she explains that she wasn't necessarily upset, just caught off guard and deeply embarrassed by the intimacy. Mill reflects on how Tina usually sticks to petting her head or back, making the sudden belly rub feel like a massive leap in their relationship. Tina promises to be more careful in the future, her voice dripping with regret as she tries to bridge the awkward distance that has formed between them. Mill eventually relaxes, her tail twitching as she admits that despite the shock, the sensation of Tina's face against her belly actually felt quite good. She compares the warmth to the feeling of her own tail when she curls up to sleep. Tina beams at this confession, her heart swelling with relief as she realizes the bond of trust remains intact. However, the peace is shattered when Kix bursts onto the scene, his face contorted with desperate envy. He has overheard the conversation and demands that Mill show him her belly as well, citing their long history as playmates. He lunges toward the creature, his hands outstretched in an ego-driven quest for the same level of intimacy Tina enjoyed. Mill recoils instantly, her paws pattering against the floor as she flees from the manic knight. She shouts back that she does not trust him at all, viewing him strictly as a boisterous playmate rather than someone entitled to such a vulnerable display. The pursuit continues through the halls, with Kix chasing Mill relentlessly while other knights watch the spectacle with varying degrees of confusion and amusement. The one-eyed knight observes the chaos with a sweat-beaded brow, noting that Kix's aggressive persistence is entirely counterproductive. He ponders his own standing with Mill, recalling the small favors he has done for her, like opening doors or providing a fresh blanket. Nearby, a group of 3 knights huddles together, their faces lit with a strange, competitive glow as they discuss the legendary soft belly and the prestige that would come from being allowed to touch it. Mill eventually finds herself cornered, her eyes wide with indignation as she glares at the men who view her trust as a prize to be won. She declares with startling bluntness that if they try to force the issue, she will grow to hate them. She finds the entire situation absurd, especially after hearing that Tina had been gossiping about the experience the previous night. Mill trots away, leaving the men in a state of stunned silence as they realize their greed has only pushed her further away. In the aftermath, the one-eyed knight takes it upon himself to restore order. He finds Kix still lamenting his failure and delivers a sharp, physical reprimand to the back of his head, the impact echoing through the room. While Kix reels from the blow, the one-eyed knight approaches Mill with a calm, steady presence. He reassures her that he has no intention of acting as foolishly as the others and that he has already instructed the rest of the unit to leave her alone. Mill's eyes fill with tears of gratitude as she gazes up at the scarred veteran. She feels safe in his presence, viewing him as her only true protector among a sea of evil, tummy-obsessed knights. She thanks her one-eyed knight and allows him to hold her, finding comfort in his large, steady hands. A few days later, the tension has largely simmered down. Mill finds the one-eyed knight and explains that she felt bad for being so harsh earlier, noting that Kix likely acted out because he lacks friends and social grace. She expresses her relief that the belly-rubbing fever has passed and she can finally nap in peace. The knight simply listens, his expression unreadable as Mill mentions she feels safest napping near him. The quiet moment is interrupted when the knight reports on his recent patrol. He explains to his commander that he found a lost child wandering near the woods and took it upon himself to escort the girl back to her home in town. The commander nods in approval, acknowledging the knight's reliability. As the knight prepares to depart, Mill watches him with a lingering sense of curiosity, her mind wandering back to the sensation of being stroked by his rough, protective hands. Milfiria observes the peculiar nature of spirits, noting how they effortlessly cycle between animal and human forms as they please. This realization sparks a deep curiosity within the young fluffy spirit, who wonders if such a transition into human form is a milestone achievable as a child. The mechanics of this transformation remain a mystery, leading to quiet contemplation on how to bridge the gap between their current state and the human appearance of their parents. Despite the uncertainty, Milfiria remains optimistic, reasoning that since the human language has already been mastered, the physical shift should surely follow with enough effort. This desire is fueled by a wish to interact more deeply with the inhabitants of the fort, specifically the one-eyed knight, even if the soldiers there seem quite fond of the spirit's current fluffy appearance. The focus then shifts to the training grounds of the fort, where a small, white, fox-like creature wanders past a wooden training rack. The spirit's attention is captured by a broken sword discarded on the ground, likely snapped during a particularly rigorous training session. While swords were not a part of Milfiria's previous life, they have become a common sight in this new environment. Upon closer inspection, the spirit notices the blade is intentionally dull, serving as a tool for practice rather than a weapon of war. Intrigued and perhaps a bit overconfident, Milfiria attempts to lift the shattered blade, only to find the weight staggering. The sheer mass of the iron, even in its broken state, raises questions about the incredible strength required by the knights who wield such instruments daily. As Milfiria struggles just to budge the weapon, the one-eyed knight approaches, his expression hardening into one of stern disapproval. A sharp reprimand cuts through the air as the knight commands the group to stay away from the tools on the ground and warns against playing with swords. This sudden harshness leaves the spirit reeling, as it marks the first time such a stern tone has been directed their way by the one-eyed knight. Overwhelmed by guilt, the small spirit retreats, reflecting on the disrespect shown by toying with an object so central to the knight's profession. The realization that these men guard the very mountain where the spirits reside, all while treating the spirit with consistent kindness, makes the act of carelessly playing with their equipment feel like a significant betrayal of that bond. The weight of the mistake lingers, and even after returning home, the spirit remains noticeably despondent. When a larger spirit creature offers a chance to join the daily rounds and check on the territory, Milfiria accepts, hoping the distraction might help. Despite the comforting presence of the larger spirit, the thought of the one-eyed knight's anger persists, leading Milfiria to avoid returning to the fort that day. Seeking further comfort, the spirit seeks out their father in a place far removed from the snowy peaks. This location is noticeably warmer, a place where the biting cold of the mountain does not reach. Amidst this change in scenery, a small, dark-furred creature with a flame-tipped tail is startled by the sudden appearance of a massive, serpentine spirit. This large entity is revealed to be Milfiria's father, whose presence causes a humorous but dramatic reaction from the smaller creature, Hugauk. While the scene is lighthearted, Milfiria remains preoccupied with the unresolved tension at the fort, acknowledging the need to apologize but lacking the immediate courage to face the one-eyed knight again. 3 days pass in self-imposed exile from the fort. Within the fortress walls, the absence is felt keenly by the soldiers, who look around and wonder why the small spirit has not visited. The knights exchange concerned glances, noting that even their commander appears haggard, sporting dark circles under his eyes as if something significant is weighing on him. Eventually, Milfiria gathers the necessary resolve and creeps back into the fort, spotting the commander buried in his work. The spirit feels a pang of loneliness and a deep desire to mend the relationship. When they finally come face to face, the tension breaks instantly. Milfiria offers a tearful apology, and the one-eyed knight reacts with immediate relief, scooping the small spirit into his arms. The knight confesses his own fears, explaining that he only became angry because of the danger the sword posed. He had worried that the spirit would never return after being scolded. He assures Milfiria that he is not truly mad and encourages the spirit to go and greet the rest of the fort's inhabitants once they have both calmed down. The reconciliation is complete, and Milfiria is once again welcomed with open arms and excessive pampering by the various knights and the branch chief. The spirit even enjoys a sleepover with the one-eyed knight, fully restored to their place within the fort's community. After returning home and being greeted by a motherly spirit figure, Milfiria reflects on the recent events. The encounter with the sword and the fear of the knight's anger has shifted the spirit's focus back to the original goal of growth. Standing before the mother spirit, the small fluffy creature asks the question that has been lingering since the beginning. What is the secret to finally taking on a human form? Milfiria has spent over 2 years in this new world, moving past the initial shock of her situation to embrace a life filled with royal treats and the warmth of the community at the fort. While it might have seemed to onlookers like she was merely playing with her father and the spirit child Kyugaug, she was actually focusing her energy on a monumental personal milestone. With a sudden surge of pride, she calls out for her mother to witness the fruits of her labor as she finally masters the ability to shift her physical essence. In a flurry of light and magic, Milfiria sheds her fox-like appearance to stand before her mother in a human form, though her transformation retains a few distinct animal traits. Her mother reacts with a mixture of shock and overwhelming affection, immediately sweeping the young girl into a tight hug and praising the loveliness of her new shape. Milfiria initially feels a wave of intense embarrassment when she realizes the transformation is imperfect, as her large, fluffy ears and long tail still protrude from her human body. She worries that the look is unprofessional or silly, but her mother reassures her, finding the halfway appearance absolutely adorable. Her mother reflects on how, regardless of the world they inhabit, certain things will always captivate the hearts of people. The two share a tender moment as Milfiria's mother continues to squeeze her, noting that the girl's fox ears and tail make her look like she is simply imitating a fox. Milfiria, curious about her mother's own abilities, asks if she can also manifest her human form while keeping her ears visible. When her mother obliges and reveals her own partially transformed state, Milfiria is struck by the ultimate body her mother possesses, shaking with excitement at how cute and amazing she looks. They revel in each other's company, with Milfiria insisting her mother maintain this look all day. Later, Milfiria decides to test her new appearance on others and sneaks toward the training grounds where the knights are gathered. She jumps out to surprise a one-eyed knight, who is initially confused by the sudden appearance of a human child. It takes him a moment to recognize that the girl standing before him is actually Milfiria. He is impressed, noting that even her predecessor, Snowlia, did not achieve human form until she was 3 years old, whereas Milfiria has accomplished it at just 2. He offers a gentle pat on her head, acknowledging her great achievement even if the form is not yet perfect. While the one-eyed knight takes the surprise in stride, the chief of the group has a much more dramatic reaction, collapsing into a heap on the ground and gasping for air. His subordinates watch in concern, explaining that seeing Milfiria's human form without any preparation was such a shock that it sent him to the verge of a nervous breakdown. They suggest leaving him alone to recover, though Milfiria remains confused as to why her new look caused such a stir. Meanwhile, the other knights and members of the fort crowd around her, their eyes wide with excitement. They find her human form irresistibly cute and clamor for the chance to pet her and touch her ears. Milfiria tries to dodge their hands, spinning away and insisting that she does not want them to mess up her hair or touch her sensitive ears. Despite the chaos, Milfiria is pleased with herself, believing that the human body will be much more convenient for her daily life. She immediately puts this theory to the test by seeking revenge on a knight named Kix, who had hit her with a snowball the previous year. Using her new hands, she hurls a projectile at him, leading the knight to remark that her very first act as a human is one of petty vengeance. As she plays, the one-eyed knight keeps a watchful eye on her, warning her not to hurt herself while she frolics. The excitement continues when Kyugaug, the spirit child, arrives on the scene. Milfiria triumphantly announces her transformation, but Kyugaug seems frustrated, perhaps because she beat him to this developmental milestone. He huffs and insists that his current form is strong enough and that he doesn't need to change. However, the human girls at the fort find his spirit form just as charming, cooing over his eyes and tail. When Milfiria tries to introduce him to her human friends, he remains stubborn and hostile, claiming he doesn't get along with them. Milfiria eventually picks him up to force an introduction, which embarrasses him deeply. He retreats, leaving Milfiria to apologize for hurting his pride and wondering why boys are so complicated. A week later, the rivalry reaches a new peak when Kyugalg suddenly appears in a human form of his own. He brags that the transformation was easy and immediately becomes confrontational when he sees Milfiria sitting on the lap of the One-Eyed Knight. He demands that the One-Eyed Knight put her down, acting like a protective guardian. Milfiria is caught in the middle, trying to finish her meal while the table is too high for her to sit elsewhere. Kyugalg's jealousy flares as he boldly declares that Milfiria belongs to him and that she will one day be his partner. The knights are quick to shut down his bold claims, telling him to come back in 100 or even 1,000 years. They state firmly that Milfiria will not marry anyone who isn't strong enough to defeat all of them at once. Though Kyugalg insists he is strong, he eventually sputters and retreats again, admitting he doesn't actually want to be with her until he is older. The One-Eyed Knight reflects that they might have been a little too rude to the boy and suggests that Milfiria should try to stay on good terms with him. Milfiria, curled up in her animal form once more, simply sighs at how difficult life becomes when everyone around her is so overprotective. Spring has arrived late at the fort, and while Mount Snowsharia remains draped in white, the surrounding plains have finally transitioned to fresh greenery. 3 years have passed since Milfiria was born into this world as a spirit of snow, and she celebrates her 3rd birthday while resting comfortably. Despite her desire to grow up and match her mother's beauty, her mother explains that spirits are only considered adults once they surpass 100 years of age, meaning Milfiria must remain in her current state for a significant time longer. Her mother rouses her from sleep, insisting they practice tree climbing, a task the young spirit finds unnecessary and exhausting. Milfiria attempts to argue that the wind is too strong for such dangerous activities, questioning the utility of a spirit needing to climb trees at all. Her mother, however, views this training as essential preparation for when Milfiria eventually leaves the nest, which typically occurs around the age of 50. While Milfiria appreciates her mother's love, she finds her constant worrying over her supposed weakness to be excessive. During their time outside, a piece of paper flutters toward them, catching Milfiria's attention. Upon reading it, her mother's expression darkens with annoyance, and she immediately shreds the note into pieces. She reveals that the message came from Hilg, a spirit of fire who moved from the south 150 years ago. Hilg apparently resides in a quiet volcano and has persistent, unwanted romantic designs on Snowlia, frequently urging her to stop training and talk about love instead. Milfiria observes that her mother has no special feelings for Hilg, especially since she has had children with others, and her mother bluntly tells her not to concern herself with the matter. Seeking a distraction, Milfiria decides to practice her movement technique, which involves targeting members of the fort like Tina and the commander. She executes a sudden dash but ends up disoriented in a dark place with a low ceiling. To her embarrassment, she realizes she has accidentally launched herself directly into the desk of the One-Eyed Knight. The knight, preoccupied with paperwork, remains surprisingly calm, gently petting the small spirit as she panics. Once he finishes his work, they head toward the cafeteria, where a startling rumor is circulating among the knights. Gildo, a knight known for eavesdropping, has spread word that the branch chief is planning to quit the order. This news deeply upsets Milfiria, who begins to worry that her habit of breaking into the branch chief's office during his breaks to play ball has caused him undue stress. She fears her fun was actually a burden that contributed to his decision to leave. However, the One-Eyed Knight dismisses the rumors as nonsense, clarifying that the branch chief will never leave the order. The truth is more complex. There is talk of the unit returning to the main group in King's Landing, and a man named Captain Sorrel, a nasty superior from the Knight's past, may be assigned to the fort. This captain is described as a determined and ambitious man who might be seeking to take charge of the harsh northern environment. Though nothing is officially decided, the uncertainty leaves Milfiria so anxious that she can hardly taste her food, her thoughts lingering on the future of the branch chief.